and provide notice that the Flagstaff City Council has the ability to recess into executive session for legal advice, should we so choose to do so. This is a special council meeting. Today is Tuesday, June 23rd. Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. With that, Vice Mayor, would you like to do the pledge?
It'd be my honor. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Mr. Aslan, can you please read our mission statement?
Madam Mayor, the mission of the City of Flagstaff is to enhance and to protect the quality of life for all.
Thank you, Mr. Aslan. We are now down to public participation.
Mayor, roll call.
Oh, sorry. Roll call, please.
Mayor Evans.
Present.
Vice Mayor Shimoni.
Present.
Councilmember Aslan.
Present.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Here.
Councilmember Odegaard.
Present.
Councilmember Salas.
Present.
Councilmember Whelan.
Okay, with that, we're now down to item number 4. Item number 4 is for public participation. These are for items that are not currently on our agenda. Because they're not on our agenda, we can receive input and listen, but we cannot reply back per law for anything that we might hear. I do want to mention that our public comment protocol is different tonight than it has been since we started our virtual meetings. When we went virtual, we did not realize that we would be doing this for 3+ months. And so at that particular time, public comment was submitted to us, and we had city staff go ahead and read that public comment. As this has now become more of a normal meeting format for us, we want to make sure that we maximize the public's ability to interact with the Flagstaff City Council. And so we are trying to make the public comment protocol as close to what it would be as if we were in chambers. So when we were in chambers, we had individuals fill out the public comment cards, and when their names were called, they would come up and they would read their public, or they would give us their public comment for up to 3 minutes. That way they were able to put their expression and their passion and their thought behind their words. And so, because we are still in this virtual way of doing things, we have figured out a way to allow public to also interact with us. So that is why you see a change where if there's a public comment card submitted for public comment or for any of our items, staff will now be calling those individuals into the meeting. So that will take a few extra moments of time, council. But again, it's allow the public to really engage with their council. With that, Ms. Drum, is there any public comment?
Mayor, we do not have any comment for general public participation. We do, however, have comments that we'll be calling in for later in the meeting.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Drum. Thank you. We're now down to item number 5. This is recognition of our Police Chief, Kevin Treadway. Mr. Clifton.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. This is certainly something that I am quite glad and honored to kick off, but it concerns somebody else who needs to be recognized here. So allow me just to frame the discussion and quickly turn it over. I know that many people would like to speak to this. Here we are on June 23rd, and we are just days away from Police Chief Kevin Treadway officially retiring from the city of Flagstaff. He winds up a long tenured career here and a very stellar career. I take note, and I know this simply because we did an interview with the police chief recently on video. I take note of the fact that Chief Treadway has served in just about every capacity possible with the Flagstaff Police Department. He has worked himself up through the many ranks and then has been serving as leader of that department for quite some time. I also know that there are many recognitions that are happening for the police chief, internal to the department, of course, but we thought that it would be appropriate to at least bring this in front of the council and hence in front of the community to have an official recognition of him at this time. And what I might do, and this is entirely unscripted, and forgive me for that, but I might invite Shannon Anderson here in just a minute to offer up her comments about Chief Treadway, and then perhaps we could hear from Chief Treadway himself, and I'm sure others want to speak to this. Shannon, as Deputy City Manager, has worked closely with Chief Treadway in recent times and has been instrumental in providing us with some narrative about Chief Treadway that we used in the video clip that I mentioned last week. Ms. Anderson, are you with us and able to offer some comments?
Ms. Anderson? So how about we go ahead and hear from our chief?
I think that would be a great idea, and we could circle back to Shannon at a later time.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Great, super. First, let me say thank you so much for this very kind recognition. You know, I leave the city of Flagstaff with some mixed feelings, a lot of anxiety, excitement, of course, but remorse as well. City of Flagstaff is a wonderful place to live, and employees of Team Flagstaff, including our own police officers, are made up of some of the finest people on the planet. In the wake of unprecedented times in policing, I just want to make a couple of brief comments about the Flagstaff Police Department and my profession, Mayor, if you might allow.
Yes.
I'll try to be brief. You know, I entered into police work like so many others to make a difference. I joined the Flagstaff Police Department because I wanted to do the right thing, and I promise you that I stayed here because we do. I know that my job is very difficult, but it also affords me the wonderful opportunity to save a life, to improve the quality of life for others, to help someone on their worst day, to help that day get better, console the grieving, and yes, enforce the laws that help protect others in the community. And it's because of these opportunities that I think that law enforcement is the greatest profession in the world. Staff at the Flagstaff Police Department look forward to conversations that are undoubtedly to come. We are policing correctly. We conduct thorough and documented background investigations on all those who apply, and we make no concessions in the caliber of the applicant that we hire. We hold each other accountable, and we welcome and offer opportunities for citizens to contact us with their concerns and complaints, and we investigate and document every one of them, always contacting the complainant with the outcome. Each of our individual officers are evaluated on their efforts to promote community policing here in Flagstaff. Through our Citizens Liaison Committee, our transparency.com and Facebook sites, and our community support meetings, we are the most transparent law enforcement agency in the country. Our policies are vetted by a bank of experts through the reputable Lexipol program, and final draft is reviewed by an in-house attorney who is not an employee of the Flagstaff Police Department. That same attorney and a deputy chief review every use of force body camera image to assure that our response to resistance is within policy and the law. On the rare occasion when we catch one of our own doing something wrong, it is our command staff who launches the formal internal affairs investigation. Our reaction to policy violations is swift, thorough, and our discipline is administered commensurate with the seriousness of the offense, and these decisions are not influenced by a police union. We don't accept military equipment from the government, and we never have during my administration. We reported on this to our community in 2015. We do not racially profile. My administration has never set goals for numbers of arrests, with the exception of DUI enforcement, as our DUI infractions here in Flagstaff are 3 times higher than average communities our size, and we feel we must do our part to protect our motorists. Comparisons between census and arrest data is always flawed. It does not recognize the specific demographics of those who most often come to the attention of the police through calls for service. It does not take into account repeat offenders, of which there are many, and it doesn't take into consideration the arrests of folks who spend a majority of their time in Flagstaff but do not live here. I regret that I can't personally be a part of the community conversation coming, but I know that members of this department who remain after my departure are ready for this task. They are consummate professionals. Like always, because we are a learning organization, we are eager to identify opportunities to be even better. I want to just briefly share a few sentiments reflective of the culture created at the Flagstaff Police Department, a culture molded daily for years, not just in response to a crisis. A lot has changed in my 33-year career, but the basic tenets forming the foundation of effective policing has not. Policing today, as it has always been, is really about integrity, honor, and establishing trust with the community through the development of relationships and partnerships. It is about doing what is right. Ethical policing and the trust in the police actually reduces crime, and we know inversely that policing in the absence of legitimacy breeds defiance. I want to share the Flagstaff Police Department's 4 C's of effective policing. We believe that to do it right, we must police compassionately, consistently, constitutionally, and correctly. We should express compassion for the struggles and difficulties of our fellow human. We must always police consistently, applying the law equally to all citizens, regardless of race, gender, or social status. We must police constitutionally, understanding that our greatest responsibility in a free democratic society is to protect the rights of those afforded to the citizens of this great country. And we must police correctly in the eyes of our citizens and the courts. The Flagstaff Police Department conducted an average of 1 community support meeting a day last year, discussing a variety of different aspects of policing here in Flagstaff. Sadly, too many of these meetings were held in mostly empty auditoriums. I'm not sure why citizens don't take the time to educate themselves on our department before a crisis, and it's an even bigger mystery to me why so many assume wrongdoing by our agency without even asking a question. We all want many of the same things. I personally have been advocating for better services for our street population for years, for example, in order to maintain the welfare and safety of the community in lieu of making arrests. So it's my hope that we all start on common ground on our path forward. Let's do a deep dive on what is already in place and common practice at the Flagstaff Police Department, and only then decide if we need to do something more or something different. To those living in this wonderful community, take a page out of Mayor Evans' book. Work alongside your officers. Maybe do a ride-along or attend the Citizens Police Academy. Toil with them to solve community issues. Educate yourself and get to know the officers who place their lives on the line to protect this great community. We have long held our doors open for this conversation, and we continue to invite you in. Thank you again to Mayor and Council, City Manager's Office. I leave this cherished profession confident that we are policing correctly, and my highest honor has been to represent the fine men and women of the Flagstaff Police Department over the past 8 years as your chief, and to serve as a law enforcement officer in Flagstaff for 33 and a half years, dedicated to our mission to protect life, property, public order, and the rights of the individual. I'm ecstatic to remain in Flagstaff and comforted by the fact that my home will be patrolled by the finest law enforcement agency in the country as I move into the next chapter of my life. So once again, I thank you all. I want to specifically thank Mayor and Council for your public service, your hard work and dedication to the people of Flagstaff. We should all be indebted to your tireless efforts. So again, thank you for your kind comments and recognition, and specifically for allowing me to share some final thoughts with you all.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to go to Mr. McCarthy, followed by Mr. Odegaard.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Over the last month or two, there's been a lot of questions about police, not so much about Flagstaff, but about across the United States. You know what I'm talking about. And Chief, a lot of questions came up, and you just addressed almost all those questions, and I really want to thank you for that. I want to tell 3 short stories, and I'll be brief. There was an ethics issue with one of your officers that came up, and you and I talked about it. And you know what? You took care of it. It did not get swept under the rug. You aggressively addressed the issue. That officer doesn't, I don't know if he lives in Flagstaff, but he sure doesn't work in your department anymore. So there will be problems, but you and your leadership took care of them. I want to talk about a second thing. There was an incident in my neighborhood with one of my neighbors and someone that didn't live in the neighborhood, and it escalated, and it got to be kind of dangerous, potentially. But your officers came and they very eloquently diffused the situation. And everybody left. Nobody got in trouble. No guns were pulled. And your officers did an excellent job of diffusing the situation. And thank you for the leadership on that. Now, this last one I'm going to bring up is on a little bit lighter note. This happened Saturday. And I was up by the Home Depot on the west side. And I turned right and went down to Route 66. And an officer was right in back of me. And I pulled up to the new stoplight at Reardon Street. And he was on my left. I was on his right. And I rolled down my window and I motioned for him to roll down his window, which he did, with a very serious look on his face, like, what does this man want? So I told him, I says, officer, I think we are totally set up to do a good drag race right here. And I got a really good laugh out of him. And I had a good laugh out of it too. So I appreciated that your officers can have a sense of humor when that's the appropriate thing to do. So I wish you the best, and I'm glad you're staying in Flagstaff. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Odegaard, followed by Mr. Aslan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to Chief Treadway for your years of service to the organization of the city of Flagstaff. I knew your dad, who also had served for the organization of Flagstaff. 2 generations of commitment of service is very admirable. You've held your department to a higher standards of policing. As I sat in the city council chambers ever since 2014, you always talked about the 4 C's of policing, of consistently, compassionately, correctly, and constitutionally in the eyes of the public and the court. As you have said, you have the finest department in the state, and I agree with you 100%. So I challenge my colleagues in next year's budget to increase the pay of our officers to match the finest department that we have. And again, Treadway, thank you for your service. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to miss you. Thank you.
Mr. Aslan, followed by the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Treadway, thank you for your decades of public service, and congratulations on your distinguished retirement. I got to know you professionally first and foremost as our interim deputy city manager, and I've personally seen you wear both that hat and your hat as police chief through some complicated situations over the past couple of years. And I've learned to implicitly trust your experience and your wisdom, and most importantly, your moral true north bearing. It is my firm opinion that you genuinely seek to enhance and protect the quality of life for every single resident and denizen of Flagstaff. And anyone who takes issue with that doesn't know you as well as many others do. And thank you for your comments just now. I could really hear the pride you take in your department in your voice. And I think your words matter greatly. And these words should go a long way towards healing and toward keeping our community relationships respectful and healthy. Something you've clearly accomplished over your 3 decades of service, and more recently as our chief. And Chief Treadway, I've said this to you recently before, but I think it's worth repeating and elaborating upon. I've really appreciated your leadership and strength and organizational skill, and I hope future councils continue to inherit such superb officers in this critical role. You've always done a wonderful job in far more ways than I or any council member will ever be aware of. And the difference out there is on our streets today, where we're all kind of wondering why a curfew was necessary in our community a couple weeks ago. That's a big deal. And as always with difficult leadership, it mostly goes unstated and underappreciated. So again, thank you for your 30 years of dedication, which has quite literally led directly to the streets of Flagstaff, having been safe these past few weeks.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for being with us this evening. You know, as I look at the image up on our screens, first of all, I have to comment. I love the mustache. That looks really good. I appreciate it. But you know, a comment I sent to you via email was that your issue date, July 1st, 1987, is the same date of which I was born into this world. And so I feel like there's an extra bond between us because of that. And, you know, council members, I hasn't said decades, but it will be coming up on 33 years as of this July 1st. And I appreciate that. And we'll be thinking about you on my birthday. Chief, I appreciate your transparency and your constant willingness to communicate and talk with me. I had the honor of being part of the implicit bias training that was offered to members of the community this past year, and it was a very positive experience, and I'm very grateful that our officers have that ability to have that training as well. Your service to the city of Flagstaff is greatly appreciated by so many of us, and I will, like I said, really miss our conversations, and I'm just grateful that you'll be sticking around town, and I hope to definitely be bumping into you in town, hopefully on two wheels, on a bicycle from time to time, and that I just wish you a smooth transition into retirement and you and your family well. And I look forward to my future efforts with the police department here in Flagstaff. Thank you, Chief.
Ms. Whelan.
Hi, Chief. Thank you so much for being part of us for so many years. You know, when I first took a seat on council, I asked many questions, and never once did you ever lead me to believe that my questions weren't welcomed. You sat with me with understanding, along with your deputies. I've sat with you at the table with ICE. I've sat with many of the individuals that you have mentored on CJCC, Stronger as One. We've traveled together to try to find the answer of what to do with our, in helping our unhomed population. And I just have the utmost respect for you and those that have walked beside you in your leadership. Many years ago, I used to go into your parents' house and clean their carpets when I had a carpet cleaning business. And I know we've talked about that. We've talked about your love for history and the excitement that you have. And I hope you have many, many more years of just enjoying life, because you have taken good care of all of us. And I hope you don't mind a phone call from time to time, because I would love to reach out to you. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Mr. Clifton and then Ms. Salas.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Chief, I was going to invite Shannon to speak because I know you have been working closely with her, and I failed to remember that she is heading up a NAPEP meeting. She's at a board meeting. So forgive me for that miscue on the front end. I know that Shannon would have words that she would want to share. And in my attempt, I will try to fill in for her. And it's actually a little bit easy for me to do that. I enjoyed the interview last week, Chief, and have really enjoyed working with you over the past year. I'm going to state here what you and I have talked about a couple of times of late, and that is this. When we think about the last year and all the events that have transpired, it's rather remarkable, starting with the museum fire a year ago, and then rolling into the budget season and our successful pursuits to try to finally tackle the issue of financing the unfunded public safety pension. That has been in the hopper now for several months, and we seem to be nearing closure on that. And I know that you and many of your colleagues are grateful to see that happen. We then entered into something entirely unforeseen, which was the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic, and with it, a huge change in how we conduct business here at the city, at least in terms of having to shutter many of our buildings and do things virtually as we're doing right now. And if that wasn't enough, Chief, then we had the recent and very much alive Black Lives Matter movement, and with it, a series of very peaceful demonstrations here in Flagstaff. You think about these events and take note that this occurred in your last year of public service as a police chief. And what you and I have shared is that how fitting and even appropriate to have your career culminate, if you will, with these types of events to lead the city with, to help lead the city through and navigate through all of these things. And I think it's a real testament to your leadership and the leadership of those around you to have conducted such a successful navigation through these times. And I do think, and I'm serious when I say this, very genuinely stated, that it's quite fitting that these things happened during your last year with the city. So we thank you for your leadership, Chief, and we do all really, we want to share our excitement and enthusiasm for what lies ahead in your next chapter. It's a very well-deserved retirement. Thank you.
Ms. Salas?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be vulnerable here for a minute because my story about my first encounter with our Flagstaff police have actually inspired me over the years to offer myself to run for office. So many years ago, I was just new to Flagstaff. I had to call 911 in a domestic violence situation. So our compassionate police officers responded and de-escalated the situation. So fast forward in 2018 when I met at that time Deputy City Manager / Chief Treadway as a candidate and educated us candidates for council on a lot of our law enforcement policies. Over the years, working in many organizations in Flagstaff and Coconino County, I have seen how highly professional and compassionate our police officers are. And that truly demonstrates the type of leadership we have, not only of the city, but of our police department. Because to me, leadership is about discovering who we are and about striving to become better, to strive to be the best version of ourselves in serving our community and helping everything and everyone around us to become better too. And that was really exemplified by Chief Treadway. Chief Treadway, with so much and immense gratitude, thank you for your service. Happy trails. And I want to close my comment with a quote from President Woodrow Wilson. You are not here merely to make a living. You are here in order to enable the world to live more amply, with greater vision, with a finer spirit of hope and achievement. You are here to enrich the world, and you impoverish yourself if you forget the errand. Having mentioned that, I think law enforcement is a vocation and a calling, and I salute Chief Treadway and our members of our police department for doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salas. So I'm going to just take the opportunity now to speak a bit about Chief Treadway. I've been trying to figure out exactly what I was going to say today, other than I'm sad that we're losing our chief, but I'm excited about the adventures that he now gets to go on. So I have known Chief Treadway for 23 years, and I knew Chief Treadway before he was a chief. I actually met Chief Treadway when I started my career at Sunnyside as an activist, as a community organizer. He was one of the first officers that I met. He was with Coop, and Coop was Chief Brent Cooper, who was the chief before Treadway. And we had this crazy idea in this neighborhood that we could put the police in direct contact with residents, and that we could build friendship and camaraderie, and that we could do something called community policing. And it was an idea that was novel at the time, was not well known or well used. And we did this under a U.S. Department of Justice. It's a federal grant called Weed and Seed. And I had the opportunity to paint over graffiti, to do hot dogs, to do Toys for Tots, to have really hard conversations about the role of police, community policing, and what that looks like. We did citizen police academies. We did bike marathons. We had police officers get out of cars and walk around the neighborhood. We took back a park during that time. We established 2 safe havens. We had a block watch that at one time had over 220 people participating in it, actively participating. That was coming to our meetings and doing activities every week. And the crime rate at that time was 30% in Sunnyside. Sunnyside's 1 square mile in the middle of Flagstaff, has over 10% of the population living there. Crime rate was 30%. And then one summer we had 11 drive-by shootings in 8 weeks. So this was my introduction to Police Officer Treadway. At that particular time, we established something called the King Street Squad. And that was a squad of officers because we didn't want rotating officers. We wanted our officers to know who we were as residents. We wanted them to be actively engaged with every element of our community. And so we established something called the King Street Squad. And Officer Treadway, he was in charge. I think he was a captain at the time, maybe a lieutenant, but he was in charge of the King Street Squad. We had a shooting in our neighborhood, and Coop was there with all the officers. And we were in Killup School, and we mediated and had a conversation that went on for over a year. And then all of a sudden, Coop died. It was very sudden. And we lost our chief. And the neighborhood was concerned. And the city was concerned, the police department, but also the neighborhood. Because Coop was very passionate about the engagement of police officers and how they should be connected with the community. And then we were wondering who was going to be in charge of us, for lack of a better word. And all of a sudden, we had Treadway, Chief Treadway. And Chief Treadway took the ideals of community policing to the next level. And, we were in school gyms. We were sitting, like Councilmember Whelan mentioned, with ICE. We were sitting with Interfaith. We were sitting with just people on the street, in the community, in the parks, basketball after dark, doing all things that were community minded. And so that was my introduction to Treadway. You know, as mayor, I will tell you that I'm so proud of our chief and his department and how he runs it, his goals and ideals. Councilmember McCarthy mentioned that, yeah, there's been some people that were not necessarily down with the way our police department is governed, but those individuals also didn't last long. Those individuals also left. Those individuals were not part long-term of our police department. And so I'm very confident in who we have. I'm very confident that there is a solid foundation when it comes to community engagement, community policing. Treadway, our chief, talked about, you know, the ideas that he has as to how things can be done better and what can be done instead of using a police officer. And the fact that under his leadership, we don't have any military equipment because we've never taken it. And I think that that really speaks to who Treadway is as a person, as a citizen who lives here, and who he is as our police chief. And so, Chief, I wish you the best in your adventures moving forward. And I'm happy to have had the opportunity to work with you for the last 23 years. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, City Manager Clifton, thank you all so much for the very kind words. I tell you, it makes it very difficult to leave. I'm going to miss Team Flagstaff so very much. And again, my grief is assuaged only by the fact that I'll live here and hopefully be able to stay in touch. And thank you again. These are very nice comments, and I can't tell you how much it means to me.
So it's my understanding there's a video that is forthcoming.
Mayor, Council, we do have a video interview of the chief on the latest GCTV. It's about a 13-minute interview, and while we've been listening to the many good comments here, efforts are being taken to have that posted on the city website so that people will be able to view that.
So with that, we'll go down to item number 6. That is consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2020-17. This is a certificate of participation debt authorization, pension, COPS. Staff's recommended action is that we read ordinance number 2020-17 by title only for the final time and then adopt. I believe that someone has their speaker on that might be in a car. If you could please mute yourself, that would be helpful. Thank you. Staff?
Good evening, or good afternoon, Mayor and Vice Mayor and City Council. There is no presentation related to this second read of the Certificate of Participation Authorization for Debt, and we are here to answer any questions for you. This is Rick Tatter, Management Services Director.
Mr. Odegaard.
Yeah, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Rick Tatter for sending out that email concerning this agenda item. It was very helpful, very well read email that you sent out, and I really appreciate it. It definitely helped clarify any confusion I may had concerning this item. So thank you for taking the time and sending that out. I appreciate it.
Okay. Ms. Whelan.
Well, I must say this has been quite a process, and I would just like to take a moment and thank leadership and council, Rick, you and Brandy and your department. It's just been an amazing process, and again, thank you for your clarity on that last email that you sent out. I know I am a questioning sot, and the the reciprocation that you have been able to give me in all my questions and all my stubbornness. I just really appreciate that, and I respect that, and I just want to say thank you so much to all of you. And with that, I'd be happy to move to read ordinance number 2020-17 by title only for the final time.
Is there a second?
Second, Jim McCarthy.
So there's a motion by Ms. Whelan with a second by Mr. McCarthy to read ordinance number 2020-17. There was a comment by the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Rick. Quick question, Rick, can you just explain to me what the last sentence of that first paragraph in your email to us was regarding the unfunded liability payment steadily increasing to nearly $20 million in 2034 to 35?
Absolutely, Vice Mayor. What that is referring to is the actuarial plans for the PSPRS reports that we receive show that on the current path of unfunded liability payments, we continue to see a growth year after year. You know, as people get closer to retirement, as there's less people on in this membership, we would have higher debt service payments in the out years. So in fiscal year 2034-35 would be our peak of payments toward the unfunded liability at 20 million versus the 10 million we currently contribute to that plan. So it's an actuarial assumption in how payments are made.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, there's been a motion. There's a second. Is there any further conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff relating to the financing of a project, specifically approving publication of notice of proposed lease of lands and buildings from and lease purchase back of such land and buildings to the city and request for bids in connection therewith, authorizing the acceptance of a bid with respect thereto, approving the sale and execution and delivery of certificates of participation in a lease purchase agreement to provide the necessary financing therefore, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of necessary agreements, instruments, and documents related to the sale and issuance of the certificates, delegating authority to the Management Services Director of the City to determine certain manners and terms with respect to the foregoing, authorizing the taking of all other actions necessary to the consummation of the transactions completed by this ordinance, and ratifying all actions taken to further this ordinance, providing for severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 2020-17?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second, Salas.
There's been a motion made by Mr. Aslan and a second by Ms. Salas to adopt ordinance number 2020-17. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Before we move on to the next item, I did want to mention something. I put something in the chat. I want to make sure it's on the record. Because of the partnership that we were able to form with the Flagstaff Police Department, the crime rate in the neighborhood dropped down to 6.7%. And that was due to the community partnership that we had established with the Flagstaff Police Department and everything else that we were doing in that neighborhood at that time. So with that, we are now down to item number 7. This is a consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2020-15. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff adopting a public safety personnel retirement system contingency reserve fund policy, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and establishing an effective date. Staff's recommended action is that we read ordinance number 2020-15 by title only for the final time and then adopt. Staff?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council, this item is also related to the pension debt that we look forward to issuing to become close to 100% funded as we can. This is a policy that we walked through last week, so there is no presentation for this week. But if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Council, if there's no questions, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion made by Mr. Aslan and a second by Ms. Whelan to read ordinance number 2020-15 by title only for the final time. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff adopting a public safety personnel retirement system contingency reserve fund policy, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and establishing an effective date.
Is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 2020-15?
I so move, Salas.
Seconded.
There's been a motion made by Ms. Salas with a second by Ms. Whelan to adopt ordinance number 2020-15. Further comments? Mr. Clifton.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My comments could have waited till after the action taken, but I just wanted to take a minute and offer up some additional thanks to the team at Stiefel Nicholas, and I think a couple of those members may be joining us during this meeting. We've had so many experts at the table helping us through this entire process, and I'm not going to name them. We provided you a nice introduction of them last week with their bios, which were all very impressive. And I do believe they are here listening and watching this meeting unfold. All the time they've been with us, and they have been in front of council now a couple of times. They have provided great information and clarity to a rather complicated process and have helped us get to the point where we're at. So it's very much been a team effort. I wanted to acknowledge their great work and offer up our appreciation for all the services that they have provided. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second. If there's no further comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We're now down to item number 8. This is a discussion. When and how the city might negotiate an agreement to disallow short-term rentals. Staff?
Good afternoon, Mayor. This is Tiffany Antall, Planning Director for the City of Flagstaff. I'm here to take what direction that Council has in regards to this item. I did prepare a short staff summary, but I do not have a presentation for you tonight.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Antall. Now, I would like to suggest to Council that perhaps this is something that staff could look into during different rezoning applications as they come up on a case-by-case basis. Council? Mr. Odegaard, followed by Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And really wanted to thank Councilmember McCarthy for bringing this up during a fair process. Because we had a development agreement that we had looked at last year concerning a project here in Flagstaff, and the developer themselves brought forward a way of dealing with short-term rentals that can struggle for communities throughout Arizona and the country, is providing housing for the workforce housing here in Flagstaff. And so thought was looking at short-term rentals and how we can take a look at that. And so with that, as the mayor just said a moment ago, we have challenges concerning short-term rentals. The state of Arizona has preempted any local cities or townships having for the local entity to deal with short-term rentals. So I'm in favor of, a case-by-case as it comes up through the development agreement, and see what a local developer can work with the city about short-term rentals. So, but I really want to thank Mr. McCarthy for bringing this up and having us to take a look at it and what the reality is, what we may or may not be able to do. So thank you, Councilmember McCarthy.
Ms. McCarthy?
Well, thank you, Mr. Odegaard. And I would also like to thank staff. I had several offline discussions with staff about the best way to handle this. And so I guess in summary, when appropriate, staff could discuss homeowners association rules that would disallow short-term rentals. And in other words, this wouldn't be a formal policy, but it would be something that staff could do when it's appropriate and when developers think that it would be good actually to improve the quality of their developments. So based on that, I would suggest that the fair item, which I brought forward, we could probably cancel that if that's the will of the other council members, because it seems like we have sort of an informal go forward process on this. Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Salas?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and gratitude to Councilmember McCarthy for bringing this forward. And I appreciate the mayor's direction in terms of, we can bring this up, as the need arises, as we are pretty much preempted, so we want to tread this topic lightly, because the city's ability to regulate vacation or short-term rentals is truly limited to protecting the public health and safety in accordance with Arizona law, as well as to ensure that property owners register their rentals and the appropriate tax is collected for this type of commerce. Neighborhoods may be able to regulate short-term rentals, hence, like HOA and through voluntary private agreements made between neighbors. And we've seen that voluntary iteration from developer for Miramonte that's coming up on East Ponderosa, where they said, the HOA will not allow short-term rentals. So, and these agreements are usually referred to as private deed restrictions and are not regulated by the city, nor the city is a party to that agreement. So, the issue of vacation rental by owners have come up multiple times, whether it's noise, whether it's safety, or whether it's they're not paying sales tax, or they're not declaring their VRBOs as such. It is a continuing discussion, and it has to be made along the lines of economic vitality and development. Thank you.
I do believe that I'm going to go to the Vice Mayor, then I'll go to Mr. Clifton. Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I don't have anything really to add to the conversation other than appreciation for the topic and desire to do more. Unfortunately, in Arizona, as we've heard time and time again from council members, there's not much we can do. So we've been preempted in many ways, but I support staff looking at this on a case-by-case direction coming forward to us. Thank you.
Mr. Clifton?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Two very quick comments. First, a lot of discussion about the state preemption, and I would only add to that, it is, I believe, an evolving discussion at the State House, and all we can do is sit tight and see what emerges from it. It's a topic in so many communities right now. So we will be watching with interest, but I really wanted to inform Council and the Mayor of something that's happening at the staff level, and many staff have been involved in this process, but we are endeavoring to engage the services of a third-party service provider that will help us do an inventory of our short-term rentals in the community and further provide monitoring services and so forth. This is all just data. It is not policy, nor is it regulation, but I do think it's very important data that will inform future discussions with this council. This particular research project was budgeted last year. It was carried over into the next fiscal year, which is just right around the corner. And I just wanted to alert you that we are moving forward. We've had a competitive process, and there will be an outcome of that fairly soon. Thank you.
City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to let the mayor and council know, Greg already spoke to the fact that it's ever evolving at the legislature, but more specific to the posture in which this item comes before council right now, it's a fair item. It had already received the support of 3 under Rule 4.03, the second paragraph in the Rules of Procedure. It can come off as a fair if there is anyone on council that wants to keep it on, then it stays on, but it can come off if nobody objects to that.
So is there anyone who objects to us just pulling this off of our agenda and moving forward? Okay, it looks like we're fine with pulling this off the agenda. So with that, I think our conversation is over, and we'll move on to the next item. Our next item is item number 9. This is consideration and adoption of resolution number 2020-09, a resolution endorsing the declaration of a climate emergency for the city of Flagstaff and requesting regional collaboration on an equitable transition and urgent mobilization efforts to restore a safer climate. Staff's recommended action is that we read resolution number 2020-9 by title only, and then adopt resolution number 2020-09. Ms. Drum, do we have public comment cards for this?
Yes, Mayor, we do, and I will let Ms. Fobar and Ms. Salzberg, they are calling the commenters if you're ready for those, or if you'd like to have the presentation first.
To have the presentation first, and then I'd like to go to public comment, and then turn that inward to council. Okay, staff? Okay, presentation then. So we'll just go ahead and move forward.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is Greg Clifton. I think we had Nicole Antonopoulos queued up to do this presentation, and I saw that the presentation was before us, and then it exited. I'm assuming there was a technical difficulty probably on Nicole's side. And Nicole, if you're able to, are you with us? Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
I just continued and started again. Can you hear me and can you see the presentation?
You are audible. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. Nicole Antonopoulos, Sustainability Manager. I'm honored to bring forward the citizen-initiated Climate Emergency Declaration Resolution for your consideration. My presentation is broken into 4 areas, including...
Nicole?
Yes.
We are not able to see the presentation at this time.
Oof. Okay. Let me back out one more time and I will start over.
And I'm sorry,
Stand
Nicole,
by.
you did have it queued up before, but it exited. So whatever you did, you were almost there last time.
All right.
Also, Austin can't hear anything.
And Nicole, the presentation is in front of us.
Excellent. And is it in presentation mode or view mode?
It looks like it's in view mode. If we're seeing all the slides on the left-hand column. There you go. Thank you.
Okay. And you can hear me.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I've been having some technical difficulties with Teams lately. All right, so my presentation is broken into 4 areas, including the context to the Climate Emergency Declaration, the declaration itself, mobilization, and how we move forward if the Council chooses to adopt this resolution. So beginning with the context, I'd like to provide background information that highlights important milestones. In October of 2018, the International Panel on Climate Change, also known as the IPCC, published the Special Report on Global Warming, which compares warming scenarios of 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius. In November of 2018, the Flagstaff Climate Action and Adaptation Plan was adopted by City Council. That plan sets an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions goal by the year 2050. When staff brought the plan forward to Council, we did note that the IPCC report had just been released and that we would need to address its findings and revisit the plan's goals in the future. In November of 2019, the United Nations Emissions Gap Report was released and emphasized the need for urgent action. The report states that emissions must be reduced 7.6% every year until 2030, or we will miss a defining opportunity to limit the catastrophic impacts of climate change. The report also stated that given current inadequate commitments, we are now on track for a devastating warming of 3.2 degrees Celsius. Consequences are grave, particularly for the world's poor and most vulnerable. And then in September of 2019, the global climate strike catalyzed global and local climate action. Locally, more than 1,800 community members gathered on the South Lawn of City Hall to show their support for increased climate action. The rationale for increased action is rooted in science and community will. It will require bold and swift action and changes to the status quo and current systems. This graph reiterates the IPCC and the United Nations reports. It establishes the current global warming trajectory if swift action is not taken. Climate change is already a threat to people, property, and society that has the potential to overwhelm systems, and it can only get worse. By definition, this is an emergency. So let's shift to a local discussion and the citizen-initiated Climate Emergency Declaration resolution. This slide provides a timeline for how we got here today. At the global climate strike in September, community members gathered signatures requesting City Council declare a climate emergency. Petition 2019-02 was officially submitted to the city on September 24th, 2019. The item was heard as a fair item on October 15th, 2019, then placed on the January 28th, 2020 council agenda, at which time it was unanimously approved by City Council to be brought back as a resolution. The purpose of a climate emergency declaration is to accelerate sustained and meaningful action by all levels of government and for people globally to engage with the challenge of avoiding catastrophic climate change and restoring a safe climate. The use of the term emergency is a way of signaling the need to go beyond reform as usual. The resolution before you was drafted by Flagstaff community organizers who worked with various people throughout Flagstaff, including the Sustainability Commission, Northern Arizona University's Climate Science and Solutions graduate program. Council member Aslan assisted as well. The draft resolution was then vetted through the sustainability section and the city's legal department. The resolution identifies 8 specific actions. 1, that the city of Flagstaff declare that a climate emergency threatens our city, region, state, nation, civilization, humanity, and the natural world, and recognizes the need for a dramatic increase in its ambition to combat climate change. 2, the city of Flagstaff commits to its own citywide transition and climate emergency mobilization effort, utilizing Flagstaff Climate Action and Adaptation Plan as the foundational framework in recognition of accelerating climate changes and prioritizing appropriate funding for its implementation. 3, the city of Flagstaff commits to educating residents and especially Flagstaff's youth about the current climate emergency and inspiring action. 4, the city of Flagstaff underscores the need for full community participation and recognizes that the residents of Flagstaff's and community organizations and other such allies will be integral to and in the leadership of the mobilization effort. 5, the city of Flagstaff commits to keeping the concerns of vulnerable communities central to all transition and climate emergency mobilization efforts. 6, the city of Flagstaff joins a nationwide call for an emergency mobilization collaborative effort in full partnership with surrounding tribal nations and traditional agricultural communities at all levels of government to prioritize adaptation and mitigation in relation to climate change. 7, the city of Flagstaff will take steps to revise the goals outlined in the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan to be in alignment with the United Nations November 2019 Emissions Gap Report, while maintaining equal emphasis on adaptation, mitigation, and equity. And 8, that the city of Flagstaff calls on the state of Arizona, the United States of America, and all governments and peoples worldwide to initiate a transition and climate emergency mobilization effort to mitigate global warming and create high-quality, good-paying jobs with comprehensive benefits for those who will be impacted by this transition. Council may recognize this graph, which is extracted from the 2018 climate plan. It illustrates a business as usual scenario and the climate plan's current goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 80% by the year 2050. If Council were to adopt the climate emergency declaration resolution, this is what Flagstaff's new target would look like. An emergency requires that we come together as a community to address the current situation or the emergency at hand. This coming together is what I will be referring to as mobilization. Mobilization is an opportunity for alignment, for inclusion, for innovation, for collaboration across disparate groups, and for problem solving. The climate emergency is unlike any emergency we've experienced. We must realign our systems to better respond to this emergency, which we are experiencing with more severity and frequency, be it in our own backyard or halfway around the globe. Climate change will affect every element of our community, and we must be ready to face it in every part of our lives. Perhaps this analogy would be helpful. Our firefighting systems are well poised to fight fire. We have an opportunity to rethink our social support systems, economic systems, and energy systems and transportation systems to better fight climate change. This requires realigning systems to prepare for, respond to, and recover from the emergency at hand. It will require bold action from our elected to our elementary school students. This is mobilization. This graph represents 2 risk scenarios within a mobilization framework. This framework identifies the 3 phases of mobilization. Phase 1 is to stabilize, phase 2 is to manage, and phase 3 is to resolve. We are in phase 1, requiring drastic action. We have a choice to stay in phase 1 for 30 years or to act boldly and stabilize climate change so we can shift into the management phase sooner. In Flagstaff, we know the value of investing upfront as a tool for avoiding greater impacts and expenses later. I know many of us remember 2010 as a turning point. In an 8-month period, Flagstaff endured 5 feet of snow in 5 days, extreme winds, extreme humidity, extreme temperatures, drought, catastrophic wildfire, and flooding. We learned the value and in 2012 invested in the Flagstaff Watershed Protection Project, an investment that has paid off, as we saw last year with the museum fire. We cannot control the volatility of climate change until we are in the management phase, but we can design and redesign systems to better absorb disruption, operate under a wider variety of conditions, and shift more fluidly from one circumstance to the next. Council, as with any commitment, there are benefits and challenges. The climate emergency is no exception. The opportunity we have as a city organization and community is to turn risk into opportunity. For example, lower transportation and energy costs will make our economy more competitive. We can align economic goals with climate goals and vice versa. We have an opportunity to discontinue investment in systems that are no longer working and prioritize reinvestment into systems that advance climate action, builds resilience, instills equity, and protects our community's investments. This will require a big shift in how we as an organization and a community operate. If approved by council, well, where would we begin? We would start by diving back into our community-wide greenhouse gas emission to understand where we can take additional bold action and create opportunities. Given our work up until now, we are well poised to take bold action. We know that most of our greenhouse gas emissions come from the transportation and the powering of building sectors. From there, we would update the climate action and adaptation plan to incorporate the new mitigation goals and revise this goal and all subsequent sub-goals, strategies, and actions. Sustainability staff would start these revisions and calculations immediately. Specifically, what would need to happen in order to get our emissions to zero in 9.5 years. Sustainability would then bring amended goals and actions back to City Council within 120 days. Simultaneously, we would reignite the very dedicated community members that made up the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Steering Committee, as well as invite the Climate Emergency Declaration organizers to participate in that committee. We would re-engage with the climate plan consultants to assist and verify final calculations. We would use a majority of staff's time to offset any expenses associated with that. Following preliminary conversations with our former consultants, we believe that our staff offset can keep us at a fee under $5,000. And then staying consistent with our engagement efforts during the Climate Action Plan, we would lean on our community partners to help communicate new goals, the reality of those goals, and the work ahead, as well as continue efforts to inspire action. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, we would be doing the community a disservice if we didn't have the honest conversation about what a commitment to carbon neutrality by 2030 means. It will be hard. It will require consistency, major changes to processes, strong leadership, but none of this is insurmountable. The next 2 slides contain some preliminary ideas of what this could look like. And please keep in mind, these are just preliminary. We would have to update internal processes and incorporate a climate lens and consider the greenhouse gas emissions, equity, and adaptation in all of our processes and decisions. We would also need to change how we make decisions at all levels of the city, from budget decisions to capital improvements, from building and zoning codes to how we build our roads. We would need to develop decision-making support tools for City Council and all decision makers that provide a holistic and consistent approach. These would be designed to align with other city processes like performance-based budgeting. We do know that impactful methods, pardon me, I went one too far there. We do know that impactful methods for carbon neutrality include large-scale carbon sequestration projects, grid electrification, both vehicle and buildings, changes to land use and transportation systems, and shifts in budget prioritization. These are all prescriptive measures, but that is what carbon neutrality necessitates. If the City Council commits to a 2030 carbon neutrality goal, Flagstaff would join 1,732 jurisdictions around the world, representing more than 820 million citizens. Our neighbors throughout Arizona are watching. We have and continue to be a resource to them and a trusted leader throughout Arizona. Sustainability sees us as an incredible opportunity to redefine systems, to reinvest funding in systems that advance climate action, builds resilience, and instills equity. If I may ask Council to take a moment to reimagine our future and envision a Flagstaff that has zero emissions from transportation, because more people can get around town in a safe, healthy, and convenient manner that does not involve a car. A Flagstaff that has zero emissions from waste because we make sure excess food gets to those who need it rather than being discarded. A Flagstaff that has zero emissions from buildings because they are efficient and that they are affordable and readily available. And a Flagstaff that has zero emissions from water because our systems are regenerative and reliable on clean energy generation. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, this is possible. It has been an honor to bring this item before you on behalf of the Flagstaff community. Are there any questions?
We're going to go to public comments first and then come back to Mr. Aslan.
Mayor, this is Stacy Salzberg. I have attempted to call the public commenter, and the phone number that was provided is not connecting.
Was there just one public comment card?
There was just one, yes.
Okay, we're going to go back to Mr. Aslan.
Wow, okay. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, and members of the public who I hope are listening right now. Thank you very much. And wow, Nicole, thank you for your presentation, too. I found it to be incredibly exciting and also, honestly, a little bit terrifying. But in that way you feel when you're at your first day at the gym with a no-nonsense personal coach. Thank you for reminding us that this is more than
Nicole,
just platitudes.
I'm sorry to break in. Could you please stop sharing your screen?
Mr. Aslan, can you restart?
Oh, yeah. Well, Nicole, I was just thanking you for being our personal coach here on the first day of this very exciting and a little bit scary journey. You're reminding us that this is more than just platitudes. You know, it's a big deal. It's a moonshot, and I'm feeling exhilarated about it. I'm going to try to keep my comments brief because I did speak at much greater length back in January when the community first brought this declaration to us and we moved it forward then. I hope that my support for passing this document speaks for itself by now. I put a lot of energy personally into drafting the final language that we'll be voting on tonight. And I ran my campaign for council with a promise to help champion a new mindset like this. But a lot has changed since January, and I do have some further thoughts and a new perspective to share. Honestly, it feels like a geologic age has passed since January of 2020. First, we began to grapple with the global pandemic, and then more recently, we found ourselves on a precipice, or a threshold, if you will, with lasting social upheaval on one side, or a long overdue national reconciliation on America's oldest moral failure on the other. So priorities are shifting, budgets are tightening, behaviors are in flux, and the immediate future seems more uncertain than I think it's ever felt, at least in my lifetime. It would have been nice to celebrate the passage of this document in person with everyone who helped to organize it and push it. And we were waiting for that opportunity, but it's apparent now that just won't be possible for the time being. But I'm glad we're having this discussion now anyway, because one of the unchanging things through all this uncertainty has been the science of climate change and the accumulating dangers it poses to our local Flagstaff community. I'd like to quote a tweet from President Obama that helps frame the challenge before us in a new way. And he said this kind of presciently back in February or March, I think. We've seen all too terribly the consequences of those who denied warnings of a pandemic. We can't afford any more consequences of climate denial. All of us, especially young people, have to demand better of our government at every level. I think it's really valuable, actually, to compare the climate crisis, the climate emergency, to our new experiences with a pandemic. Because of science, we've been capable of seeing both catastrophes coming. And because of science, there's hope for us if we heed the advice of the experts who are trained to tackle these issues. Most interesting of all to me is the new language we all share about flattening the curve and what that means. The goal of a climate crisis resolution, and much of the language drafted into this document, are all about flattening the curve. It's the same narrative. It's the same challenge. It's just a different timescale. Significantly reducing our carbon emissions in the next decade aims precisely to flatten the curve so that environmental impacts are mitigated enough to buy us the time we need to further address the problem and keep our environmental care system from reaching capacity and experiencing catastrophic collapse. I hope that sounds familiar. So unsurprisingly, here we are looking down the barrel of a problem we can see coming and that we can collectively solve if we take action and work together. I'm not sure, to be honest, how that's going for us in the US on the COVID-19 front. But we have to be able to learn from our mistakes and failures. Flattening the curve of carbon emissions requires investment and listening to the science and acting accordingly to aggressively change course. And the longer we wait, the higher the costs and the greater the challenges. So the time is now. And yes, we need to pass this climate emergency declaration. But that's the easy part. The hard work and the sacrifices we must learn to share still lie ahead. And I firmly hope and believe that we're capable of rising to that challenge. And I look forward to my next 2 years on council and the many, many opportunities we're going to have to make these hard choices and to face them and to exhibit true leadership for the rest of Arizona and also the nation and the world. Thank you.
Okay, I see Mr. McCarthy.
All right, I'm off mute. I just want to point out a couple things that weren't completely clear in the presentation. If I understand, and Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, but the goal here isn't just for the city of Flagstaff government. The goal here is for the whole city, including every house and every car. Is that true?
Mayor and Council, absolutely. The Climate Action and Adaptation Plan is a community-wide plan. So advancing the goals identified in the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan would mean it would be community-wide.
Okay, which would be actually a much more difficult accomplishment than just converting the cities itself, the city government, over to zero emissions. The other thing I'll point out is 10 years is, especially considering what I just mentioned, is pretty aggressive and difficult. On the other hand, I'd like to say that if we don't set ourselves a goal of 10 years, then, okay, maybe the goal is 10 years, but it might take us 15. But if we have the goal of 20 years, then the results would probably be 40 years. So I am going to support this, but I'm just warning everybody that these are very aggressive goals, and we should be aware of that. Thank you. I will support the motion, though.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. And Nicole, thank you so much for your presentation and your leadership on this. I am very excited about this topic. Carbon neutrality by 2030 is extremely ambitious and bold, but I think is possible, and I think is something we can and need to achieve as a city and as the council with our leadership, with the community support. I'd like to thank city staff, leadership, all the public who have been involved in this process leading up to this day, and the city council for working on this and addressing this moving forward. We need to lead by example across the state, as you mentioned. Folks are looking to us, and I think we really do have an opportunity to do just that. I'm excited about, overlapping this with the priority-based budgeting that we're doing, and the commitment to keeping our vulnerable communities at the forefront of our decision making. I think that's a great point. I think moving forward, we're going to need strong community engagement and empowerment, and it sounds like we are on track to do just that. So I'm grateful to hear about that. And folks, if there's a time to reinvent ourselves and change our game plan and really make some big pivots in the way we operate, that time is now. And we don't have opportunities like these very often to really make some lasting change in the way we do our business like we do now. So I'm very excited that we are talking about this now, and the timing is perfect, in my opinion. Just wanted to mention the two slides that really stood out to me is a slide that illustrates the business as usual line graph with the goals of the CAP, which I thought were ambitious, and then the emergency goals in the red line by 2030. So, we're taking the CAP and just making it that much more aggressive. And I'm excited. I totally think this is doable. I think it's going to be challenging. We're going to need everybody on board, all hands on deck. And the other side I just wanted to bring attention to that stood out to me was the one that talked about Flagstaff emissions and transportation being 41%, the number one, which is car emissions. And as traffic continues to increase in Flagstaff and to be a nuisance to the community, I think that, the conversation we are going to have, and hopefully somewhat of a near future after our break, regarding design standards and specifically separated bicycle lanes, I think will very much help with this number one issue here in Flagstaff, because creating separated lanes will allow for a new culture of riding that we haven't seen in Flagstaff. I'm just going to say that the current people who are willing to ride on the streets, like some of us on this call, are the 1%, but that 60 or 70% of potential riders would if they felt that it was safe through a separated lane. So I've been working with staff on this, as many of you know, and I am very much looking for that conversation coming back to council, hopefully in the months to come, and everything we're talking about. So again, Nicole, thank you, and let's do this. Thank you.
I'll go to Ms. Whelan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Nicole. Question on the regional aspect of this. Have you brought this forward? How regionally will this impact? Do we have cities and towns that want to walk beside us in this? Or is it just going to, not just going to be, is it going to be Flagstaff alone in northern Arizona mitigating life?
Mayor and Council, obviously the county will be an incredibly important partner. And considering the number of individuals who live outside of city limits but do business, travel to Flagstaff, will have a significant impact on how we achieve carbon neutrality. So they are going to be integral, as are all the large employers in town. This is a community mobilization effort, and it will require engaging with agencies all throughout the region. We have to identify our key players, our transportation partners, in NAPTA, the county, Northern Arizona University, and again, the large employers.
And I would also suggest that NACOG would be a place to visit too, as a regional intergovernmental agency. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead. I don't see any other comments from council. I do have something to say, but I'll wait until after we take this public comment. I would just really recommend that when people send public comment to us, that they make sure that their phone number is correct, because we will only call that number one time. Public comment?
Okay, Mayor. Dara's on the line. Go ahead, Dara.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, super. Thank you so much for allowing me a few minutes to speak on behalf of the community that has wholeheartedly supported and pushed forward this resolution declaring a climate emergency and elevating the goals of the CAP to carbon neutrality by 2030. I hope you have already gotten to see the letter that was signed by 97 Flagstaff citizens in support of this resolution. And I'd like to express deep appreciation to all of you on council, as it is clear that each of you recognizes the importance of this action. I think it's important that we acknowledge several things about this declaration. First, we would not be at this moment if it were not for two formidable forces. One, the Flagstaff community that has been expressing their desire for this ever since we held the climate strike on the lawn of City Hall last September. And two, the City of Flagstaff sustainability staff, who did not just create an award-winning app, but are actively and creatively working to ensure that this resolution does not become just another symbolic gesture, but that it serves as a platform to level up the cap in order to meet the United Nations statement that we are down to about 9 years to make deep and significant cuts to our emissions. But beyond paying tribute to all those in Flagstaff that have brought us to this point today, I want to emphasize the connections between and among the many crises we are facing and the far-reaching importance of addressing these crises holistically. The climate crisis, environmental justice, structural racism, and our current health crisis are not separate issues. They are all symptoms of systemic dysfunction in our society and are shining a spotlight onto every vulnerability we have created. We cannot take baby steps. We must recognize that the health of our planet and the health of all living beings are inseparably intertwined. While this resolution is a fantastic step in the right direction, it will only take us so far. But here we must boldly do the capital R right thing. Recovery from COVID-19 must focus steadfastly on the interconnections between our relationship to the earth and with each other. At the September 20th climate strike, my 11-year-old daughter stood on the stage and said to 1,800 people, "Be the voice for the voiceless. Give power to the powerless." If an 11-year-old child can clearly see that environmental destruction, power imbalances, and structural violence go hand in hand, then every one of us must finally say, the time has come. We will not stand for violence towards each other or towards our Mother Earth. No one of us can single-handedly change the trajectory of our collective future, but together we can and we must. Go farther than declaring this climate emergency. Commit to never being the mouthpiece for corporations that make decisions based on money rather than on protecting the planet and people. Decide instead to base all decisions on a foundation of climate, resiliency, equity, and justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Drum, that was our only public comment card.
For this topic, yes, Mayor.
Okay. I want to go ahead and turn the conversation back inward to council. I do have a couple of comments that I wanted to make on this topic. First and foremost, I'm excited to see that we have put this on our agenda, that we're moving forward to it. I am disappointed that we weren't able to do it in the council chambers, because I do feel that a lot more people would have been available and wanted to interact with council on this particular topic. But maybe perhaps in the future, as we move forward, we'll have the opportunity to do that. I think that now, in the midst of COVID-19, we have a opportunity that we might not have had before, and that is to establish what is going to be normal moving forward. I know that I've spoken to a couple of you, including our city manager, when it comes to what is the new norm. And one of the things I look at is I look at the fact that now that we have people who are used to working from home or used to working remotely, it might be that some of the cars that have been downtown because of the city operations might not need to be. Perhaps people can continue with this new normal, and we can look for other ways to address COVID the way we have been, that actually would directly address what we're doing with our climate action adaptation plan. So I think if we were ever going to do something bold and different, now would really be the climate to do that. One of the things that I just want to make sure that I emphasize in moving forward, the climate resolution, the emergency resolution calls out youth very specifically. I think it needs to call out people who live in poverty and minorities very specifically. I think that it needs to do that, because one of the things that when we move forward with this climate action adaptation plan, I know I was very clear about, is that people who live in poverty and people who are minorities are not normally addressed in a meaningful way when it comes to the environmental movements, and climate plans such as this. And so city staff did an amazing job going out and making sure that they got the voices of people who are most impacted when it comes to climate change, people who live in poverty, people are being displaced because of climate refugees and stuff like that, as well as the minority voices that are not necessarily always front and foremost in these types of conversations. So I would actually like to make sure that they're added in very specifically and very deliberately to this. And then lastly, I want to point out something that Ms. Antonopoulos said, which I think is extremely important. You know, she talked about the fact that being this bold and moving this forward is not going to be an easy task, and that it is going to require council making some very hard decisions. The vice mayor mentioned, the concept of the divided bike lanes. And I know that usually when he talks about that, we talk about cost, right? We talk about how much will that cost? What will that be to taxpayers? Will that raise the cost of housing here in Flagstaff? What does that mean for our low-income individuals? And so as we move forward, that is something that I think council is going to really have to stop, take a look at, and weigh in on, right? Is that from going from one antiquated system to this new normal system, how do we make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to move forward, and that we don't fix the environment in a way that then disallows the people who have historically been here, who have lived here, who should have the opportunity to raise their kids here, the chance to do so, because things are now different and perhaps they're not affordable per se for those individuals. So I want to make sure that council is mindful of that, which is another reason why I want to make sure we put them directly in this this climate resolution, because I think it's very important that we make sure that whatever we do brings everybody forward at the same time, and not just specific populations of people. And so that's all I have to say about this. Ms. Whelan.
Thank you, Mayor. Excellent to point those things out. I would like to also add to the conversation that Econa should or could be a very, very important resource in a regional way. I know I mentioned NACOG, but Econa would be the first stop, I believe. So thank you. And I'm wondering, Nicole, are we thinking about going out for bonding at some point in order to have us all join together, or you think this is going to stay in the lap of city only? What are you thinking that way?
Mayor and Council, I apologize. Had a little disruption in the connection there. Can you repeat your question?
Sure. Did you hear my piece about
Econa? I heard Econa.
Yeah. Okay,
yes,
great.
Thank you for that.
So the other question is that if we're going to take this head on, and I believe that we are going to do that, we're going to probably need additional fund. I'm sorry, Mr. Bacon would like to say he's fully in support of this action. So just funding money-wise, we need to look at that as we take strong action. Were you tossing around the idea of bond initiative, community, fees, or anything like that? Or is this solely going to rest on the city to fund this?
Mayor and Council, there's a lot that we don't know yet, but I frankly, I believe everything is going to be on the table. And we will have to assess the financing of initiatives as we look at where they are in the prioritization in terms of impacts. And you were absolutely correct, though. We have to get creative. We have to be innovative. And again, going back to this whole concept of mobilization, this is going to take the community. So as I sit here today, without having a very clear direction in terms of impact analysis in front of me, but we will have that in the next 4 months and bring that back to council. I anticipate we will see things across the board.
Well, great. And I thought, you had probably thrown ideas around, and it's good to hear. I know we're early on in the process, and I appreciate the energy and the effort. And let's get this done.
Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I just wanted to throw my support in for what your comments were regarding your most vulnerable. And again, that's why I highlighted number 5 on the climate emergency declaration, which commits to keeping vulnerable communities at the forefront of decision making. And I know that those populations can be more challenging to engage and communicate with, and they might utilize different forms of communication than we might typically use to communicate with the public. And so I definitely think that should be, maybe a further highlighted note and to your comments, Mayor, as part of this plan. Thank you.
So I guess I want to ask Mrs. Antonopoulos to put back up the climate emergency declaration, because I really would like to see those 2 populations specifically mentioned in there. Ms. Salas?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate this highly engaged and involved discussion. We have this resolution in front of us, which was backed by a citizen initiative. So just, this time last year, Council approved a budget with over $850,000 in allocation to implement the Flagstaff Climate Action and Adaptation Plan for the current fiscal year. Last week, Council unanimously passed the 2021 budget, shifting to priority-based budgeting, with $984,000 for environmental stewardship, $8.87 million for sustainable innovative infrastructure, $1.296 million for livable community, $3.269 million for safe and healthy community, $905,000 for inclusive and engaged community, and $551 for robust, resilient economy. So I just want to give voice to how can our community come to grips with climate change in a way that boosts our Flagstaff and regional economy and our people's livelihood. Inaction is not an option. The climate is changing and humans are contributing to these changes. Climate change requires local, state, federal, and international policy actions. There is so much common ground on which all sides of this discussion could come together to address climate change with policies that are practical, flexible, and durable. I believe in a policy approach that acknowledges the cost of action and inaction and the competitiveness of Flagstaff regional economy. We can call on policymakers at all levels of government to seize an approach that rises to the challenge of climate change, leveraging business leadership and expertise, our energy edge in Northern Arizona, and our ability to innovate. Community engagement and private-public partnerships are integral, very much so, in the process of further implementing the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. With this resolution, we can increase and strengthen the engagement of Flagstaff key industry sectors, advanced manufacturing, astronomy, bioscience, craft brewing, digital e-commerce, entrepreneurship, retail, and tourism. We can leverage the power of business and enterprise to develop, finance, build, and operate the solutions needed to power regional economic growth, mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, and build resilient, lower carbon infrastructure. Some local businesses already are taking action in their own operations and along their value chains by investing in technology solutions and enhancing their efficiency. We can encourage and incentivize business and enterprise to embrace advanced technologies and innovation that offer the best solution for managing climate risk and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Inaction is not an option. Thank you.
I see our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I heard the mayor and the vice mayor both talk about possibly adding something to the resolution with respect to the vulnerable communities. Were there other council members that spoke in favor of that? Have we had a majority of council that's looking at doing that?
Yes.
I will provide my direction behind that if I haven't stated so explicitly before. Absolutely.
I would too. This is Jamie.
Me too, Salas.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Council, for lending your support to myself and the Vice Mayor. I'm not sure where it goes in this resolution. I was thinking that perhaps where it says especially Flagstaff's youth, we could put a comma, minorities and people in poverty or people who are experiencing poverty. I think maybe a better way to say that, but I would leave it up to the wordsmiths and the grammar people.
Youth, minorities, and people who are experiencing poverty would seem sufficient to me, Mayor. If there are any staff members, Nicole or anyone else that wants to chime in that has concerns about that. But that, I think adding the comma, minorities, and those experiencing poverty.
Mr. McCarthy?
I'm wondering if Section 5 might be a better place to add this.
I think it would.
Can you read section 5? It's kind of small and I can't read it on my computer.
I'll read it for everyone.
Thank
The
you.
way it reads right now, the City of Flagstaff commits to keeping the concerns of vulnerable communities central to all transition and climate emergency mobilization efforts, and to facilitate the active participation of such communities.
It goes there.
I think
that's where that goes. It goes in that section. Thank you, Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about commons later.
See, I knew there was somebody who was going to do the grammar and where it was supposed to go. I knew it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That's perfect.
I'm actually going to go to Mr. Aslan to make the motion, but I'll take Mr. Odegaard as the second. Mr. Aslan?
Oh, Mayor, it is with great exhilaration, trepidation, and pride that I move that the City of Flagstaff pass this resolution.
As amended?
As amended.
This is Charlie, and I second
Thank you for that, Mayor.
There's been a motion by Mr. Aslan, a second by Mr. Odegaard to pass this resolution as amended. Is there any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Now, that was a motion to read the resolution.
It was a motion to read as amended.
Right.
Yes.
Did we have a vote yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council endorsing the declaration of a climate emergency for the City of Flagstaff and requesting regional collaboration on an equitable transition and urgent mobilization effort to restore a safe climate as amended.
Is there a motion to adopt? Is there a second? Who was the second?
Charlie was the second, I believe.
I heard Mr. McCarthy as the first. He made the motion. Mr. Odegaard can be the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Mayor?
Yes.
Aye.
I just want to acknowledge that this was a unanimous vote, and that that's amazing and really helps punch this thing forward. And I want to express my deep appreciation to this council. And, you know, the Flagstaff community showed all the forward leadership on this, and they challenged us and encouraged us to be bold and to be brave. And they provided us the platform for doing that. So 99% of the credit goes to the community. But I do want to express my deep appreciation of this council for showing a unified voice on this matter. And I'm looking forward to what becomes of it.
Thank you. Somebody is outside where there's birds.
That's me.
It's not a bad thing. I was just like, wait, I heard a bird. Okay. So there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We are going to go ahead and take like a 10-minute break. So we will come back let's come back at 5 minutes after 5. Thank you.
Streaming.
Okay, thank you. So we're now on item number 10. This is consideration and adoption of resolution number 2020-41, a resolution urging the Arizona Corporation Commission to adopt a statewide clean energy standard. Staff's recommended actions that we read resolution number 2020-41 by title only and then adopt. Staff? City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I see that Nicole has queued up the presentation. Nicole, do we have audio?
I believe we do. Can you hear me and can you see my presentation? Fantastic.
We're good to go. Thank you.
I rebooted, so hoping that this will help the situation. Great. Well, it's nice to speak to you again. The resolution before council is to urge the Arizona Corporation Commission to adopt a standard for Arizona that it focuses on clean energy. Arizona's current renewable energy standard was completed more than 10 years ago. It was established at a 15% threshold by the year 2025. This is lower than the goals of several neighboring states. The Arizona Corporation Commission mission is to ensure safe and reliable and affordable utility services for the state of Arizona. On March 25th, 2020, the Corporation Commission did direct their staff to develop a set of rules to achieve 100% clean energy by 2050. If the Commission approves a new clean energy standard, it would join 16 other states and territories that have targets of 100% clean or renewable energy by the year 2050 or sooner. If approved, the resolution in front of you would urge the Corporation Commission to adopt a statewide clean energy standard by either 2050 or 2030. You may have noted in the resolution before you that there is an option. This was left available to council considering the climate emergency declaration. The resolution would support opportunities for the state of Arizona to define clean energy more broadly than just renewables. It would allow for market-based credit trading to facilitate lower cost compliance. It would definitely accelerate climate action in Arizona. And of course, it supports our partnership with APS. And with that, Council, I will leave this to you if you have any questions and a discussion about if you would like to set this goal at 2030 or 2050.
Are there any public comment cards on this item?
No, Mayor, there is not.
Okay. Council? I see the Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I'll start us off. Thank you, Ms. Antonopoulos, for your presentation and work on this. I fully support us urging the Arizona Corporation Commission to adopt a statewide clean energy standard that achieves 100% carbon-free clean energy by the year of 2030. You know, I think as we just kind of talked about in our last discussion, now is the time, and we need to try. We have an opportunity to make an effort, so I think we need to make an effort. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Mr. Aslan?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you again, Nicole. I was proud to be part of the work a little bit in the background on this, along with Mayor Evans and the city manager and all your great staff. You know, I've been pushing for a while for us to have a better conduit of communication and lobbying and advocacy with the Corporation Commission. And this is a great first step, very supportive of this. As to the question of whether or not we articulate a 2030 or 2050 goal, you know, here's what I want to say on that, and this may be a little surprising. I think this is one example where the group wisdom will prevail. We're setting ourselves a very bold goal. We've had a little bit of time to think about it, let it set in. And the state is also making some movement in that direction. I don't know that they're there at the 2030 mental threshold yet. And I want to make sure that what we're doing is practical and achievable, but also visionary and showing leadership. So I don't know exactly what the right approach is on this. and looking forward to what others on council have to say. On the one hand, I can very much see us just moving forward very aggressively and with great enthusiasm, advocating for 2030 push statewide. On the other hand, the more practical side of me realizes that may be talking to a immovable object, and there might be more effective ways strategically to start getting the state to move in the direction that we're showing leadership on. So I'll be quiet now, and I'd love to hear what others have to say.
Mr. Odegaard?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I agree with you, Councilmember Aslan. We as a community has set ourselves a very high goal of being carbon neutral by 2030. I'm not sure if the state is ready for such a ambitious goal. I would like this resolution to be receptive from the Corporation Commission without, taking it serious, without any sense of humor if we had asked for a 2030. But so I'm in favor of the 2050 in realizing what would be acceptable from the Corporation Commission. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So I ask for 2050 and for a resolution to be taken seriously by the Corporation Commission. So thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple thoughts. One is that we really should be consistent between this and the last item we just had. On the other hand, as I pointed out before, 2030 is a very ambitious goal. So in 2050 just doesn't seem adequate. So I would suggest maybe 2040 or 2035. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Whelan.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council Member Aslan. I appreciate your sensitivity. And also, Council Member McCarthy, great idea. I think we can find that happy medium. So I certainly would choose to go maybe to 2040. And I also heard Councilmember Aslan speak about the possibilities of a council liaison or Flagstaff liaison to the Arizona Corporation Commission. I saw how well it certainly worked with Councilmember Odegaard and our transportation visiting with the ADOT board. So I think that's a great idea. I also think that, as the elections come and as the elections go, we're going to find a more supportive legislature that will help us get these goals across and messages across. So that's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Aslan.
Thank you. So in light of Councilmember McCarthy's suggestion, which makes a lot of sense to me, and also on the other hand, may feel, I could see how it might feel a bit arbitrary. I wonder if we can just sit with the tension within the language that we draft up. We could acknowledge that we have a very bold goal of getting where we want to go by 2030, and at the same time acknowledge the state might be in a different position and tackling this at a slightly different rate for a number of different reasons. But we are strongly advocating that they go as far and as fast as they can. And then make the suggestion, perhaps the state would want to up their goal by 10 or 15 years. And just leave the language like that so that everyone understands that we're trying to navigate a sensitive situation here with moving parts and a variety of stakeholders that are going to have different parameters as they grapple with these concepts.
I like Mr. Aslan's comment there. I think that that's a good approach. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I too like Councilmember Aslan's idea there, because I think the idea is that we want them to take this seriously and make bold steps and take bold steps like we are, right? As Councilmember McCarthy said as well. You know, we want to show that same sense of, you know, urgency. And as Councilmember McCarthy said, like, you know, at the local level, we understand this is not going to be easy and it's going to take some real bold effort on our part. So to ask of them to go to 2030 is definitely a push. But, you know, obviously, I think, you know, personally, you know, I think it's important that we have 100%, you know, of council on board with this letter and what the language is. And I'm, you know, obviously fine with us doing 2035, 2040, or if the group wanted to do 2050, you know, I'm on board at the end of the day. But I do think that there is value in kind of pushing them to be bold, you know, and just, but Mayor, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
So if you want to know what my thoughts are directly, I think that if we are going to be bold in our action, we should tell them to be bold in theirs. I think that when you listen to what Mr. McCarthy said, he's like, if you ask for 2030, it's going to end up being 2040. You ask for 2040, it's not going to happen before 2050. But I also understand that there's members of council that are also mindful of the fact that it might be a tough sell for them, for lack of a better word. So perhaps meeting in the middle is a better way to go. I think what Mr. Aslan is saying makes to me the perfect sense, in that he's saying we're going to talk about how bold we're being, and then we're going to ask them to join us, right, and to accelerate what it is that they're doing. That way it doesn't put 30, 40, 50, 2000 and anything on it. It just says we would like for you to accelerate what it is that you're doing. I think that's a happy medium.
I like that, Mayor, and I agree with your comments. Yeah, I think that's a good approach.
Mr. Odegaard?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, Mayor. I'd like to, for us in this resolution, recognize our goal of 2030, but not put a date on the state's goal, and talk about how we would like the state to, you know, push themselves of meeting carbon neutral. So I like that, recognizing our goal of 2030 as a community, and then not put any date for the state, but ask them to join us in that challenge. So thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, I like Mr. Aslan's idea. I guess my only concern is that can we redraft that right now? Or is that something we'll have to send back to staff and then come back to in a week or two? On the other hand, if we had to come back in a week or two, we've already had the discussion, so it could probably be a very fast agenda item in a week or two.
I think we might be able to do it now, or perhaps a direction as to how we would want it to look. Legal?
It depends on what council wants to do. If council wants to do it now, you can. If you want to give direction for staff to bring it back, you can. Either one.
Mayor, I have another suggestion. May I?
It's so accommodating of you, Sterling.
Absolutely.
My suggestion is that we ask staff to go work on the words right now, and then we can move to agenda item 11 and then come back to item 10 after they have some words drafted for us.
I actually like that idea. Council, is there anybody who's opposed to that idea?
Great idea.
Okay, let's go ahead then, and we will. Do I just table this item for the time being, City Attorney?
Mayor, Council, this is Sterling. Nicole, are you comfortable with doing that? That's the other side of this. I just thought we'd throw out there. I don't know who's going to be working on the language specifically and bringing it back to you.
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah, Mayor, all you need to do is just ask for a motion to table, a second, and we can come back to this item before the meeting's over.
I move to table
Well,
this item.
obviously get a vote on that too.
I move to table item 10 until after we complete item 11.
I second.
How about we just table it for the time being, and rather than say after item 11, just to make sure that we give Ms. Antonopoulos enough time? We'll just table it. We'll take care of it before the end.
Okay, I'll change my motion to say I move that we table item 10.
And that's fine with me. I'll second the revised motion.
Okay.
All good.
There's been a motion by Mr. McCarthy and a second by Mr. Aslan. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We're now down to item number 11. This is consideration and adoption of resolution number 2020-40, a resolution of the Flagstaff City Council urging United States Congress to pass a carbon fee and dividend legislation. Staff's recommended action is that we read resolution number 2020-40 by title only and adopt. Staff? Is this Mrs. Antonopoulos also?
Mayor and Council, it's me again, Nicole Antonopoulos, Sustainability Manager. Thank you so much. I am here this afternoon representing a citizen initiative on behalf of the Flagstaff chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby. So to provide some information on the resolution before you, in 2017, Resolution 2017-31 was adopted, and it urged United States Congress to pass legislation that would establish a revenue-neutral fee on carbon emissions. At that time, in September of 2017, there was no specific legislation. Resolution 2020-40, which is in front of you this evening, updates Resolution 2017-31 to reference HR 763, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act legislation. It was introduced in the House on January 24th, 2019, and the way that it is currently structured is that it imposes a fee on the carbon content of fuels, including crude oil, natural gas, coal, or any other product derived from fossil fuels. It imposes a fee on the carbon content of fuels, including crude oil, natural gas, coal, and any other product derived from those fuels that will be used so as to emit greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The fee is imposed on the producers or importers of the fuel and is equal to the greenhouse gas content of the fuel multiplied by the carbon fee rate. The rate begins at $15 in 2019 when the bill was introduced and increases $10 each year. It is subject to further adjustments based on the progress in meeting specified emission reduction targets. The bill also imposes a specified fee on fluorinated greenhouse gases. It includes exemptions for fuels used for agriculture or non-emitting purposes, exemptions for fuels used by the armed forces, rebates for facilities that capture and sequester carbon dioxide, and border adjustment provisions that require certain fees or refunds for carbon-intensive products that are exported or imported. The fees must be deposited into a carbon dividend trust fund and used for administrative expenses and dividend payments to U.S. citizens or lawful residents. The fees must be decommissioned when emission levels and monthly dividend payments fall below specified level. The bill also suspends certain regulations that limit greenhouse gas emissions. The suspensions expire if the emission targets established by this bill are not reached after a specified time period. With that, Mayor and Council, if you have any questions, I'm here to assist, and I believe that we will also have Sean Newell, who is representing the Flagstaff chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby, available to answer any questions. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and take the individual on the line first for public comment. Ms. Salzberg?
Hi, Mayor. Just 1 second. Ms. Knoll, your time is ready. You can go ahead and speak.
Great. Well, I'm here as on public comment and also to answer any questions if you need. So I'm Sean Newell, and first, Mayor, Council, and staff, I really want to share my gratitude for your hard work and commitment to resolve the enormous issues I've been listening to that are before us. As Nicole beautifully said earlier, if we're skillful, every action on our part can move us toward a safe climate, equity, and a sustainable economy. Tonight, you've talked about the urgency of dealing aggressively with climate change, and you've committed to taking meaningful climate action here at home, even though it will be hard, and I thank you for that. Worldwide, climate scientists and economists agree that pricing carbon pollution must be a part of a climate solution, and that's why this resolution supporting national legislation is before you here at the city. As Nicole said in September, you did take bold action to support this resolution, unanimously passing it. Flagstaff joined hundreds of other cities across the nation, and we were the first Arizona city to pass such a resolution. So your bold action, as it has before, inspired Tucson and Pima County to pass similar resolutions right after. We didn't have real legislation, actual legislation to support them, but now we do. So HR 763 is a bipartisan bill in the House. It has 80 co-sponsors. It includes all of the elements supported in the 2017 resolution. And I'll read a brief letter submitted on behalf of myself and 107 fellow Flagstaff residents. We, the undersigned, believe that climate change requires urgent, effective action at local, regional, and national levels. We agree with climate scientists and economists that carbon pricing is an effective driver of emissions reductions, and we urge you to pass this resolution urging Congress to pass HR 763. It's bipartisan, effective, and fair approach to national carbon pricing that will protect our most vulnerable populations as it reduces emissions at a national scale. So thank you for your consideration of this resolution.
Hey, Council, do you have any questions for our speaker? Not seeing any, thank you. We'll go ahead and turn the conversation inward at this time. Council, I'm looking for direction. Okay, I see Mr. Odegaard has a motion.
Do you want me to read it and then we'll have a second and then discussion, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. I move to read resolution number 2020-40 by title only.
Mr. Aslan?
I'll be brief. I just wanted to provide direction that I'm in support of moving this forward.
So would you be the second?
I will second the motion.
There's been a motion made by Mr. Odegaard with a second by Mr. Aslan. There's comment by Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to let everybody know that I really appreciate the fact that we went from the topic of what we can do about things to a statewide and now to a federal. And I just think it's great that we're acting and speaking up on all the levels that we can in one meeting. It's pretty incredible. Thank you.
There's been a motion and a second. Mr. McCarthy, conversation.
Just briefly, I strongly support this. I think it really does make sense from 3 or 4 different ways of looking at it. It totally makes sense.
Okay. If there's no further comment, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council urging the United States Congress to pass carbon fee and dividend legislation.
Is there a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-40?
Absolutely, Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
There's been a motion made by Mr. Aslan with a second by Ms. Whelan to adopt resolution number 2020-40. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and move down to item number 12, because I feel that Ms. Antonopoulos probably needs a few more minutes to look at the item that she's looking at for us. And then we'll come back to item number 10. Item number 12 is a discussion and possible direction regarding our re-entry plan and temporary use permit review process. We are going to start with Mr. Clifton, who's going to kick us off with this conversation.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Yes, I will kick it off, but this will be a team effort, like many of the presentations, and we will give Nicole a little bit of a breather here. The topic now, if we can shift gears, is the re-entry plan. And the Council has had considerable discussion of this along the way. It has been a living document, if you will, and certainly that's to be expected as the COVID-19 pandemic and all the repercussions and changing criteria has demanded that we be nimble in our consideration of how we at the city re-enter into our facilities. If I may share the screen, I will pull up the re-entry plan, and you will see it in its entirety, and there's a lot of text, and forgive me for scrolling through it, but I'm going to do that just to highlight a couple of areas. Is the re-entry plan visible to you, Mayor?
It is. You might want to
you.
make it bigger.
I will do that. How are we looking now?
Is there a way you can make it slightly bigger? That's better. But yeah, if you could do the zoom feature.
A little bit better?
Yeah, I think that's good. Well, Miss, let's try a little bit bigger. See if you could zoom it up, but maybe a couple more points. That's taking it smaller.
Yeah, I noticed that.
That's taking it too big.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm trying to navigate with my mouse here. And the mouse is a little bit sensitive. Yeah. Okay.
I think we can live with that.
Thank you. So you have in front of you the reentry plan, and I am not going to go through it. Council had a very in-depth discussion of this 2 weeks ago with Dr. Inglethaler. It was very good, and we made some modifications to that plan. But if you will allow me to scroll through and pardon the quick movement of text here, what is highlighted in front of you is where we currently stand with this reentry plan. We are in phase 2. We have been for some time. And again, I'm not going to belabor all the details. I will summarize by noting that the bulk of the city facilities remain closed, even though we operate and conduct business on a continuous basis and really without a lot of interruption. That noted, a lot of the facilities have remained closed. The obvious ones to our community, of course, are the indoor park facilities, the aquaplex and the indoor rec centers, the libraries and so forth. Outside, things have opened up. We have our city visitor center opened on a reduced capacity basis. And we're doing some things in the community, to best accommodate our residents and guests. As we look at phase 2, what is noticeably absent is any language with respect to special events and city-sponsored events and things of the like. We see those, if you will. I'll scroll down to the next phase. We see language regarding that in phase 3, which is highlighted before you. And simply it notes, and there was a lot of discussion by council 2 weeks ago on this topic, it notes that special events and other permits for activities upon city property will be limited. And then there is subsequent criteria as to capacity, number of people, space, social distancing requirements, and so forth. All of this that you see in front of you, well, 2 comments, if I may. This was and remains predicated upon CDC guidelines. And going back to my initial comments, the CDC guidelines have in fact changed, and they have changed recently. And there'll be a little bit more discussion of that in a second. So at the time this was written, you know, we were doing our best to comport with federal guidelines. The federal guidelines have changed. The second thing to note, of course, is what is not included here and what I would invite to be the topic of tonight's discussion, and that is the issuance of temporary use permits for events that occur on properties that are not owned by the city. And we have a number of those types of permits, especially in the summertime, that are issued. And in a minute, we'll have others speak to that. And criteria for the issuance of those permits is likewise premised upon a number of criteria, including health and safety. So that is not part of the reentry plan per se, but we would like to have some discussion about that this evening. I am going to exit my screen and go back to a general trying to figure out how to navigate back to the regular screen, if I may. Bear with me 1 second. So with that stated, I would like to invite Tiffany Antal with our Community Development Division and Christina Rubalcava, who provides excellent legal advice to our Community Development Division, to better frame this discussion and narrow it down a little bit more to the topic of temporary use permits with some considerations for the council. And I think, Christina, what I might do at this point is hand it off to you if you're ready to comment.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Greg. So just briefly, everything Greg said is absolutely correct. We have the reentry plan. We know, Council, you have spent a great deal of time reviewing recently, and the reentry plan does speak to special events, which are events that are on city property, and applications for special events are processed through our Parks and Recreation division. Now, temporary use permits are a little different. Those are for events that take place on private property, and those are handled by our community development group. And under city code, it's the planning director who's vested with the authority to make a decision on a TUP application, applying the criteria set forth in our code. And our code breaks out different types of TUP applications and has different criteria. But one of the criteria that's become particularly relevant in light of the pandemic that we are facing is that our planning director cannot approve a TUP application unless it will not create public health and safety hazards to persons attending the event. And so there really needs to be made a determination, or at least some guidance put forth as to, in light of the current pandemic, what is an acceptable threshold of risk for an event, so that it does not create that public health and safety hazards. Also, as our city manager stated earlier, guidance has been rapidly changing on what is acceptable in terms of public events. Prior to I think it was the last week, maybe the last 2 weeks, the CDC guidance stated that where there's minimal to moderate rates of transmission, which we have confirmed with the county health department, that is where Coconino County sits right now. When there is that minimal to moderate rate of transmission, the CDC used to say that there should be no events greater than 250 persons. Recently, that guidance has been updated, and now what the CDC does is, instead of providing that hard and fast number, the CDC provides guidance on assessing events in terms of risk, from lowest risk, which are virtual only activities, events and gatherings. More risk would be the next step up, which are smaller outdoor and in-person gatherings in which individuals from different households are spaced at least 6 feet apart and wear cloth face coverings, don't share objects, and all come from that same local area. The next step up would be higher risk, which are medium-sized in-person gatherings where people can stay 6 feet apart, but where there are attendees coming from outside the local area. And then at your highest risk are those large in-person gatherings where it's difficult for people to remain spaced 6 feet apart and where you have attendees travel from outside the local area. So that's the guidance provided by the CDC in assessing risk. And of course, when you look at that, it appears that there are some events that will be a little challenging to categorize, such as medium-sized events where people are from the same local area, or the same thing for larger events. But the CDC guidance is really directing decision makers to work with state and local health officials to determine what is an acceptable level of risk, and to set guidance in terms of how public events should go forward. So at this point, we've had a TUP application come in, and I would expect that there's going to be more, just given the fact that it's summer and there's so many events that we regularly have. And so staff is looking for direction from council on council's willingness to amend that reentry plan to address TUPs, and then to get guidance from council on if there's a particular method that council would like to see with respect to modifying the plan. Would council prefer that staff bring back some proposed criteria, hopefully vetted by the county health department? But if that's not possible, maybe retaining an expert to review those criteria, and understanding that this is definitely time sensitive. I think hopefully able to bring that back to you before your break.
We have a public comment card on this, right?
Yes, Mayor, we do. If you're ready to take that comment, I will call him and get him on the line now.
Okay. Ms. Whelan, do you have a question specific to what we've heard?
I do, Mayor. Christine, could you tell me, are there any numbers attributed to low risk, the new CDC guidelines, low risk, more risk, higher risk, highest risk? I know you said 6 foot apart, the difference being from the same area, outside the area. Each one has masks, correct?
That is correct. In terms of the number of attendees at an event, it appears that those numbers have been removed, and instead the CDC is asking decision makers to rely on state and local health officials. So the lowest risk event really, and I can share it if looks like someone already did. So the lowest risk event this is really all we have. It's just virtual only activities, events, and gatherings. And then as you'll see, as you go to more risk, it says smaller, higher risk is medium sized, but definitions are not given for these events. And it looks like the CDC is wanting to give deference to those local health officials to make a determination on what is appropriate given transmission rates and risks in a given locality.
Thank you.
Okay, can we go ahead, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'm happy to hold my question or just say it now, but I'll just go ahead and say it really quick. Christina, so, it seems like with the two higher risk categories, one of the bigger X factors is that you're having people traveling from outside the community, right?
Sorry, yes, I think it looks like for the two highest risk factors, what the CDC is looking at is the number of attendees, medium-sized and large-sized. And then both of those events, it says, and in addition to the size, attendees travel from outside the local area, which of course we know is often present in the community like Flagstaff, where we're such a popular tourist destination.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that for council and everybody. I think that really, hits home here in Flagstaff. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm going to go ahead and take the public comment and then turn it back into council. Ms. Salisbury?
Thank you, Mayor. Kevin, you are available to speak.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mayor and Council. This is Kevin Ty. I reside in Flagstaff. I'm the president of the Flagstaff Youth Hockey Association. I sent you a letter today. It's pretty lengthy. Sorry, I apologize in advance for how long it is. I would normally be more poignant, but we're in a very different time right now, and I thought I should be thorough. But I am requesting very strongly that the city of Flagstaff seriously consider, as with these special events, opening our indoor, outdoor recreation facilities with COVID safety plans in place. Perhaps even, FYHA has discussed adding additional layers of insurance and waiver forms and, operating within really good safety plans. There would be nobody coming from outside the community. It would be within our community. It would be at limited numbers. And the way I view it at the current time is we are operating right now with the reentry plan somewhat inconsistently or somewhat inconsistently. To me, it appears to be to address, it's showing cognitive dissonance where we're doing things out of precaution, but it's not consistent across the board. I mean, gyms are open. We're doing all kinds of other things. But to me, either we're going to close it completely or we're not, right? And if we're going to open things with safety plans in place, then recreation should fall under the same guidelines. And it's very important to our children. Our children right now are the ones suffering absolutely more than anybody in our community, anywhere, all children across the world. This is new. This is something they're not prepared for. They're not fully developed. Their minds, their brains are not fully developed. This is hard subconsciously. They can't express it. And I suppose my biggest question is, how long are we going to do this? Are we going to do this forever? Are we prepared right now to say that if numbers never go down, that we are going to stay in a full isolation, the way we're doing forever? And when it comes back next year, we're going to continue to do it like that forever. We need to find solutions to be able to maintain our way of lives in a safe way. And I know you're trying to do that. I really do. And I appreciate all the work and time and effort that you guys are putting into this. But I really, really urge you to please, as you consider special events and you consider other areas of our existence, to please consider recreation services. Consider our facilities. Consider our ability to operate safely. We're not having tournaments. We're not having games. We're not inviting people to town. We are operating in and with our, in ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you.
I believe we have a question from the Vice Mayor for you.
Yes.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for joining us and for what you do in our community. Obviously these are hard times for all of us, and these are not easy decisions, nor are they enjoyable for us, telling kids that they can't play youth sports. I too am a youth sport coach and work with kids around. Anyways, to get to the point, my question is, you mentioned that all your participants were going to be locals, correct?
Yes, absolutely. We're talking about our own members. So we did a survey within our own hockey community and asked our families if they want to play hockey this season, how they feel about the COVID. We got 123 responses of people that want to play, and that's out of about 190 that we had registered last year. So we had 123 responses that people do want to play. And of those, only 117 were not worried about the COVID and our ability to act safely within our safety plan to do so. Because we're not talking about, the state isn't even talking about having games until like November, even though tryouts and practices and skills and other things are happening starting in August. They want to make sure, and the state is mandating no travel outside the state and no travel, from Flagstaff to Phoenix and, to play games and such. So,
and that's the reason I bring this up is because we got a number of
skill development practice with like whatever our plan says, dividing on the ice.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
Can I ask thank you, Mayor. So a quick follow-up, because we got a number of emails from folks saying that they were traveling and that there were folks traveling here, I believe it was. And so it's concerning to me when there is travel involved. And, that's why I was kind of digging into this more with you because...
Yes. Can I clarify just so everybody knows? So there are not people traveling here because our ice rink's not open. but we do have families that have begun going to Phoenix for skill development because we are not open. And that's another thing that really scares me. I mean, as we know, the ice rink we participate in used to be the Flagstaff Ice Arena. It was renamed Jay Lively Ice Arena in honor and memory of Jay Lively, who many of us grew up with, who passed away driving back and forth to Phoenix to play hockey. So one thing that Flagstaff Youth Hockey Association has always encouraged is for our families to stay local, stay here, play hockey here.
Sure.
A lot of people get starstruck and want to move on, and it's understandable when we have exceptional kids that can. But it's something that we promote for people to stay. The only reason they're leaving because they don't have a rink, and that's sad. They're going to continue to do it. So we're going to have families driving back and forth all the time so they can play hockey. We can avoid that.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I just wanted to add one more comment. No, I appreciate everything you're saying and sharing with us. And I wish it was simpler, but I look forward to council's discussion on it. But my last comment to you is just that, you mentioned a lot of local gyms and entities of which are open and allowing folks to come and interact and engage in it. And those are just private entities. I just want to make that comment, and not public entities. And public is obviously a little different, right? So although it's happening in the private sector.
I understand that, but we are making proclamations for masks in private places. We are governing our council and our county, and Archuleta and our council are right now currently implementing proclamations that govern over private, businesses as well. And I get that these are your actual facilities. And to me, then that really comes down to liability, not necessarily only safety and caution. So that's where I'm saying that there is some cognitive dissonance there, and it's a little inconsistent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, do we have any other public comment?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn the conversation back inward. Ms. Whelan?
Mayor, I do have one more question for Christina. On those new CDC guidelines, was there any differentiation between outdoor events and indoor events?
I'd have to look at them a little closer. I'm trying to look now as you're asking. It looks like with the more risk, and that's just that second level of risk just above virtual, those are outdoor events as well. So it looks like the CDC, when assessing risk, and in its risk chart where it had those 4 different categories, was considering outdoor events. The other two, the higher risk and the highest risk, those 2 categories do not specify if it's indoor or outdoor, but I think it is notable that the second highest category, just above virtual, they are contemplating outdoor events and still believe that that's a risk.
Thank you. So, Mayor, I would like to move on. I believe that the city manager talked about a question about temporary use permits, and those permits are not on city property. I think it's clear to me that we can't, nor do we want to, control everything. And while I understand we are coming 150% from we'd like to keep our community safe. But the speaker does bring up some important issues. We're inconsistent with our county and with our city guidelines. And because of that, I think what ends up happening is we put our staff, like Tiffany, in the middle. So the recommendation that I would say on that was that we, on outdoor activities, use this recent CDC guidelines and ask the county health to partner with us on that. So, I mean, that's really whose job it is to help us set those parameters, so that it be vetted by the county, or if we need to hire another immunologist to look over our permits. But I think especially for outdoor events and I feel that are both on city property and off city property, we need to start opening those up in a very planned, methodical, safe way. I'd like to take our staff out of the middle of it and allow the county health to do what they're meant to do, and ask for them to help and look over our permits. And if that can't be done, as I said, hire an outside immunologist. So that's all I have, Mayor.
So, Council, I don't see anybody else who is queued up to speak, so I just would like to weigh in briefly on this. You know, I do agree with you, Councilmember Whelan, as well as the speaker, that there are inconsistencies. But I also want to make sure that we understand why they are inconsistencies. You know, our state, quite frankly, our governor, has not handled the COVID-19 pandemic in a very consistent way. I do not feel personally that our county health department has handled the pandemic in a very consistent way. And I think that has awkwardly made the city of Flagstaff have to step in and fulfill a role that is not a role that we would normally play. And that is trying to figure out public health and what that looks like in our community and what is the best way to open, the best way to close, and whatnot because of that. I do think that when you look at the guidelines, it's pretty clear that we are supposed to be looking to our public health entities to help us decide what the guidelines should be and how those guidelines are enacted. I would strongly suggest that we send a letter, official correspondence, to the Coconino County Public Health Authority board and ask them to weigh in and help us craft what that looks like with regards to events inside and outside. You know, what the exact numbers are, how does that look when we open, and what is it that people need to have on to make sure that they are safe and as we move forward, because that's part of our role, is making sure that our community and its visitors are safe. I would say that if this is not something that our county public health authority is able to do at this time, then I agree. I think that we need to look and see if there are experts in our community who can then act as a public health official for the city of Flagstaff. Again, this is not something that we've had before. Health is not part of our jurisdiction. So we would need to look and see if there's someone in the community who could fulfill that role, and then consider having that person either on staff or hired in a contract position as we navigate through COVID. Because as we were told by Dr. Ingenthaler, who was here with us 2 weeks ago, chatting with us about this, one, this is likely to be here through 2021. Two, there are different metrics that we need to look at when it comes to, are we doing the right thing? And that's more than just numbers. It's more than just 14 days. It also has to do with our behavior and how we as a community are accepting to some of the protocols that have been put in place. You know, the latest one is the mask conversation. And you have people in the community that are like, okay, we're wearing masks because we understand that this is important. You have other people in the community that are like, we're not going to do that. You even have a elected official down south who has COVID and has said that even though he has COVID and can transmit it, he's still not going to wear a mask. So I would agree with everybody that the COVID pandemic and the response to the COVID pandemic has been very all across the board. It's been very different. It hasn't been consistent. But I think that's because there's not true leadership at the beginning. And so it's very hard then to make decisions moving down. I think that we as a city have done a very good job at trying to be consistent. But I do agree that it's very hard for us to be putting out one message and you have the governor and other people elected in the state putting out completely different messages that tend to change depending on the day. So I see that we have the vice mayor and then we have Mr. Odegaard.
Mayor, thank you for your comments, and I agree with you. You know, the process has been extremely frustrating for everybody, and you know, as I was mentioning to the gentleman on the call earlier, this is not fun for anyone. You know, the public's patience has run out, but yet we seem to be right where we started, you know, months ago. And the message has been confusing. It's been all over the board and misleading. And so I understand the public's frustration and angst to get things going, but we have to have, you know, not only the consideration of our own community in mind, but the communities of others around us, specifically to our north, right? Our neighbors on the reservations are at a higher disadvantage when it comes to COVID and the impact on their communities. And I think it'd be wise of us to, you know, have that as a layer of the lens of which we look through in determining whether something is appropriate or not in our community. I think we should have maybe, you know, our indigenous coordinator, Rose Tohi, you know, giving us updates here at the diets. I know she sent us those emails, which are great with a lot of good information. But I think we need to have that as part of the discussion in determining what's best for Flagstaff, because what we do here in terms of public health will impact them above us. We're all very much connected in this community. Let me look at my notes really quick. So that's one piece. We know we're tourist hubs, and folks from around the state, region, and nation and globe often visit us. So just to keep these things in mind. In regards to the permitting, the TUPs, I think that permitting oversight individual is extremely important, whether it's through the county or through our different individual that we appoint. I think that's extremely important, and that we need to define the public safety component of a permit and their enforcement as the county does, and really ensure that that enforcement plan is quality and effective, and that social distancing and mask wearing practices are obviously in place. Thank you, Mayor.
Hey, I just want to follow up before we go to Mr. Odegaard. You know, Vice Mayor, you pointed out something that I do think is extremely important. You know, you spoke about Navajo Nation, which is to our northeast. But I also think we need to also highlight the fact that the issue right now, the growing issue in Arizona, has to do with Maricopa County and Yavapai County, right? And that is where the new spread is, and it's pretty sizable. And we are a tourist hub, and it's very hot down there. So now we have a lot of people that are coming into our community from places where we know that COVID has expanded. Places like Yavapai, where we did get an email today from somebody who wants to come up here and skate from Yavapai County, where we know that they're not wearing masks and they're not interested in doing that. And then also, you know, Arizona is now number one once again for something negative. We're now on all the news talking about Arizona is now the hotbed for COVID-19. And there are states that are saying they're telling their residents do not come to Arizona for a visit, because if you do, you're going to be quarantined for 14 days when you go home. I can't imagine that plays well for business here, especially because we are a tourist hub. You know, we had 6 million visitors here last year, which was up from the year before. And so I can't imagine that it's playing well in the newspapers across the country. Don't come to Arizona, because if you do come, when you go home, you have to sit out for 14 days. So I think there's a whole bunch of things, not only health-wise, but economic-wise, that we are having to filter this lens through. And again, I really wish that there was more consistency, especially at a state level, if we can't have it nationally, as to what the game plan is and what it is we're supposed to be doing. Because I do think that people are frustrated. I think council's frustrated. I know I get frustrated as to what are we doing? Are we slowing the growth or not? Is it about the hospital beds, or we just don't care and people can get sick because we have enough of them? I do think that there needs to be clarity, because I think that would really help us move forward. Mr. Odegaard?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think everyone's a little frustrated because it seems like everybody punts on this issue, including our own county health district punts on this issue. My main concern is I want consistency the best that we can as a community. We have our own, monetary criteria guidelines that we've kind of adopted. Whether we go from phase 2 to phase 3, downward trajectory in number of cases, hospitalizations, deaths over 4 or more weeks. I just looked. Yes, we're getting number of cases increasing, but that's most likely because of testing. But, as deaths for the last, I believe it's the last 8 or 9 days, we haven't had any new deaths in our community as far as what's being reported on the county's website. So going forward, just because I like consistency, the community embraces science. Since we're not getting that science direction from the county, I would like the city to hire our own professional that help us, guide us with science and making good decisions for the community. I'm not really in favor of issuing TUPs because they're in phase 3. Well, we're not in phase 3, but with science, could we be in phase 3? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. So before I make any recommendations, me personally, I'd like for the city to hire somebody to help give us that guidance that's based in fact, and then and maybe with their own personal recommendations where we should go as a community. They might say stay the status quo, or might say maybe we can move forward into phase 3. I don't know. But we did have the doctor a couple of weeks ago, if I remember right, did some recommendations that, we could have outdoor activities, but, everyone be in mask, etc. So that's my recommendations. I'd like to have that where we can look towards that professional advice, and that would give us guidance in moving forward. Since everyone else is punted on the issue, the state has punted on it, the county's punted on it, and so we just need some help so we can move forward. Some segments of the community is ready to move forward, and some segment of the community is not. But we don't know what is right and what's wrong until we have that guidance. So that's my only suggestion, Mayor. So thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I just wanted to add a couple of things. So, we heard Dr. Inglethaler from TGen mention, you don't just look at the data, you don't just look at the numbers, right? You look at all these other factors as well in making a decision. And he said, it's not necessarily a clear-cut plan for every different effort, right? Every plan has its own kind of character and way of moving forward that makes sense for that effort. So I'm in favor of us moving forward if we're doing it right. As Dr. Inglethaler said, it's not about, it's about doing it right. And then I just wanted to also just, make the comment, with the reservation continuing to be in lockdowns, they rely on us as a border community for a lot of their needs, right? And we all know this. And so it's almost like we have to have that sensitivity in the back of our minds. And that's, I guess, my biggest point, is that I'm not concerned about them coming to us. I welcome them. They're part of our community. I'm more concerned about folks who aren't as negatively impacted, asymptomatic, bringing it up and spreading it to us, which then we spread to them on the reservation. And that's just something I just want to make sure we're extra, extra cautious about. Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Whelan?
Mayor, I've heard several times the county this, the county that. As far as my conversations and the information that I've gotten, we have not asked specifically the people who head up the health department or for help. And until we do that, I think I would refrain from saying the county's not doing their job. I think they're doing probably the best they can, probably more than not. We don't always agree with one another, but that makes for a better discussion and better decision making. So I just wonder, are we at another sticking point? And I know Councilman Odegaard, you said everybody's passing the buck. Well, I would challenge us. Are we passing the buck? The question is temporary use permits. We need to give guidance to our staff. The question is then, after hearing the doctor several weeks ago, are we ready to move to phase 3? And I'm not hearing that discussion on council. So I'm asking for us to refocus and to look at those things we're being asked to address.
So to clarify that, Ms. Whelan, what we were being asked to address was the portion of our reentry plan that did not include temporary use permit review process. We weren't asked to ask if we wanted to move to stage 3 because so far, according to the guidance that we set up 2 weeks ago, our community is not on stage 3. However, then there was the conversation. I believe you mentioned some things, the speaker mentioned some things, and that opened up the conversation to something much broader.
I understand. So okay. Maybe what I'm asking, could we get back to adding temporary use permits to our reentry plan?
And I think then the conversation was, how do we do that? One of the things that the CDC guidelines has said is that we look to our local health authority to help us with that process. I believe the conversation was we should reach out to them.
And I think
we should reach out to them in a formal way and ask them for their help in establishing those guidelines.
And I believe 3 council members have weighed in on that.
So we would be waiting for, actually there's been 4, but 1 did not say yes, that's what they want to see. So the rest of the council should weigh in on that.
Okay, Mayor, thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe that we should wait, that we should go to the county and ask them if they're willing to help us. And if they can't, for whatever reason, then I think it would be appropriate for us to get some help from an epidemiologist. So there's my wait.
I believe it's Ms. Solis next, followed by Mr. Aslan.
Yes, Madam Mayor, same here. I would recommend reaching out to the public health district for advice. If the public health district has, for some reason or another, is not able to give us such advice, is to hire a third-party expert, medical expert, which is an epidemiologist. Thank you.
Mr. Aslan?
I'll just keep it brief and say I share the same advice.
City Manager, do you have direction?
Yes, Mayor, Council, thank you for another thoughtful discussion on this. We will reach out to the county, and thank you to those who have commented that we have not necessarily completed that process yet. So, but we have a good game plan in place. We'll seek assistance from our neighbors with the county, and if that's not fruitful, we will look to engage a consultant or somebody that will have the expertise to help us. I do believe I heard that the reentry plan should be tweaked to include reference to guidance for our temporary use permits. If that is indeed the outcome, we'll bring that back for a council action in the near term.
Mr. Aslam?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since we have the city manager here, I thought I'd just ask him a quick question. If you could share with us your thoughts on how exactly we're going to budget a consultant if we go that direction. And also, I'd like to drill down a little bit more on how speedy we're going to be with this, rolling this out. I think expediency is probably appropriate here. I'm just wondering how quickly we're moving.
Thank you. I'll take the second part first, Council Member. We will be as expedient as we can be, and so we'll start on this tomorrow. And we have a roadmap, and we will pursue. I think that there could be some outcomes within the next several days, and we could be reporting back to Council. So we will move forward with haste. On the first part of the question, budget-wise, there's been some limited discussion internally that a likely source of funding on this could be the CARES funding that is coming through Arizona to the city of Flagstaff, the $8.6 million, which will be reimbursed to the city later this year. And that money specifically, and Stacy BK can help me out on this if I'm in error, but that money specifically can help us fund public safety needs that are arising out of the COVID pandemic. So this seems like it would be a good candidate for that. Stacy BK, if you're with us and if you want to clarify or elaborate upon what I just said, that might be appropriate.
Hi, Greg, and Council. Yeah, I'm here, and yeah, the emergency management funds through FEMA and Department of Emergency Management do allow for emergency protective measures, and I would be happy to confirm that with DEMA to see if this is eligible, but most likely it would be.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Odegaard?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the city manager for making the comments about kind of a time frame. You know, I think we would all like to have something in place with guidance of professionals before we go on summer break. So thank you, city manager.
Indeed, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go back then to item number 10. Is Ms. Antonopoulos available and ready for us?
Mayor and Council, yes, and just want to express my gratitude to legal as well for assisting me. I'm going to share my screen, and to ensure that we captured exactly the direction that Council requested, I do need to seek some clarity on the date. So bear with me as I pull this up. And I'll make this larger. And just confirming that everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, but it's rather small.
Okay, I've got it at 180%.
Let's go with it.
If there is a trick to this process, I'm going to stop sharing and see if I can go in again.
Nicole, while you're doing that, this is Greg. I observed earlier when I was doing the same thing that what you might be seeing in terms of enlargement may be greater than what the rest of us are seeing. So if you're able to read it as enlarged without truncating any of the language, but I don't think it's exactly the same as what we're seeing. Right now, it's pretty legible.
Okay, great. So the edits that were made in section 1 of page 2 of resolution 2020-41 reads as following. Section 1, the Flagstaff City Council has taken bold steps to address and reverse the effects of climate change in the Flagstaff community and urges the Arizona Corporation Commission to join the City Council by adopting an aggressive statewide clean energy standard that achieves 100% carbon-free clean energy in our state, period.
Council? Mr. McCarthy?
In a word, good.
Mr. Aslan?
I like it. I think it threads the needle we want to thread.
Mr. Odegaard said thank you. I like it. Ms. Whelan is fine. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole, I like how you said period. Can we just write out that period? Really drive home the statement. I'm just teasing. No, it looks great. Thank you.
Ms. Salas?
It's good. Thank you.
Okay, with that, is there a motion?
I would like to move to proceed, Mayor, with resolution number 2020-41 as amended.
Is there a second?
Second, McCarthy.
This is Charlie, second.
There's been a motion made by Mr. Aslan with the second by Mr. McCarthy to read resolution number 2020-41 by title only. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oops, wait,
Aye.
wait.
I think it's adopt.
City Attorney?
Yeah, it's
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. This is to read.
right. Then we go to adopt.
Yes.
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council urging the Arizona Corporation Commission adopt a statewide, carbon-free clean energy standard as amended.
Is there a motion to adopt?
Move to adopt. This
Okay,
is
I've got it.
Charlie.
Who was the second?
Never mind. You're good. Go ahead.
Second, Mayor.
Okay. There's a motion to adopt. City Attorney? Okay. There is a motion to adopt. There was a motion made by Mr. Odegaard and a second by Ms. Whelan. This would be for a resolution number 2020-41. Is there any further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. City Attorney?
Aye. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt you so many times. I just wanted to thank Kevin Pinsel. He was integral in getting that language put together to put before you. As Nicole mentioned, legal, but Kevin was the primary behind it. So thank you.
Go, Kevin. Okay, we're down to item number 13. Item number 13 is informational items and reports from council, staff, and future agenda item requests. We're going to go ahead and start with the Vice Mayor today.
I think I have nothing to add this week. I appreciate it.
Mr. Aslan.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have something, but first I wanted to just extend my appreciation for all of the wonderful, amazing things that are happening today to city staff as well. I spoke about the community and my gratitude for my fellow council members. And of course, none of this would have been possible without the dedication and hard work of everybody working behind the scenes throughout the city. And I really appreciate the contribution that they've all made. And just quickly, I have a to from thing. I think this mostly involves Sterling and the city attorney. It's probably a legal question, so it will probably require an executive session. And it involves House Bill 2686, and that is a preemption which doesn't allow municipalities to dictate their own gas and propane future, I believe, but I'm probably missing a few details there. But if that helps us zero in on what I'm talking about, I hope it does. I am curious if it may not be as airtight as I'm hopeful that we might be able to find a way to navigate the language to make some recommendations moving forward. And maybe I'll leave it at that until we have a chance to. I can send an email to you, Sterling, or just tell me how to proceed so that you have the details you need to do the research you need to do.
City Attorney.
Councilmember Aslan and Mayor, Council, I want to make sure I'll just have a check-in with you, Councilmember Aslan, and then we can go from there to determine where to go next.
Fantastic. I just wanted to bring it up officially here, and I look forward to getting in touch with you.
Thank you.
It certainly is a matter that pigtails very nicely off of all the progress we made today with acknowledging a climate emergency and trying to take action on that, and doing so in the most autonomous way possible for our municipality. That's all I have.
Okay, we go to Mr. McCarthy.
I don't have anything tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Odegaard.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just one item I wanted to mention to my colleagues. I attended the ADOT board meeting on last Friday. Usually every June, the ADOT board does their tentative agreement of formalizing their 5-year plan. This year, they chose not to do that just because with COVID and everything's kind of up in the air as trying to project revenues. So they are postponing their 5-year plan formalization until the fall. But that's nothing negative for communities around the state of Arizona, especially for Flagstaff. There's still projects that have been put in that tentative 5-year agreement that will still be going forward, even with not a formal agreement as of now. But that's the only thing I wanted to say. So thank you. Have a good week.
Ms. Salas?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to request the city manager if we can keep this re-entry plan as a continuing discussion in our agenda, keeping in mind our approved re-entry plan and the monitoring criteria and our efforts to reach out to the public health district in coming up with a guideline for temporary use permit. And also, eventually want to entertain some conversation about our indoor facilities. We have received numerous emails about our indoor recreation facilities that the city own. Just to have that transparent conversation here on council and giving voice to the folks who have sent us their thoughts and their perspective. Thank you.
Ms. Whelan?
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a note, I'd like everyone to know, which I was surprised, that our commission meetings are not being streamed. So if you miss one and you thought you would take it up at another time, that's impossible. I would like to mention the Juneteenth celebration, which was absolutely phenomenal. And I was grateful that I could attend, and just want to say thank you very much to our Black community for putting that on. Had a piece of education, piece of celebration, and it was really quite wonderful. The other piece that I would like to address is, and this is to you, Mr. City Manager, I know that we as a council have decided to use an administrative approach rather than go through a longer and more intensive fair process when it comes to Black Lives Matter. So my question is about that process. I know that I would like to ask you to update us as to where we are. Southside Community Association did contact us, did say that they would like to have 6 public forums of Black lives and the lived experience of Blacks in Flagstaff. And they also gave us topics that would be scheduled. And so I'm just wondering, where are we with that? Have we contacted them? Have they contacted us for those public forums?
Mr. Clifton?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'll respond to a couple of things, if I may, Madam Mayor. Yes, on getting the reentry plan back, by my count, we have 2 more meetings before the recess. We would be glad to have an update during both those meetings. As was stated earlier tonight, and probably implicit throughout that discussion, is we as staff are anxious to have council input on this. We are seeking your guidance. It's a big lift, and I'll be blunt, I don't think we can handle it without your guidance during the recess. So not without making some assumptions that we fear may not be entirely consistent with council. And we come forward to you very humbly, asking your guidance to help us with this heavy lift. On to Councilmember Whelan, 2 comments. We cannot stream the commission meetings in their entirety. We cannot afford it. It was never a given premise that we could. And I just offer this up, Councilmember, as an explanation. I know it's probably what you're expecting to hear, so I'm just validating that with our recession plan and everything else. Yeah. I want to impress upon you, Councilmember, and thank you so much for bringing it out, because it is good public information, what you said. So thank you. It's very expensive to stream these meetings. We are doing what we can with the council meeting. We're having staff discussions about trying to stream those commission meetings that deal with significant property and budgetary interest. There are a couple that will fall into that category, but I hope you agree with me, or are not surprised at least when I say we can't afford to do it all. There may be a day in the future when we can. I very much look forward to that in the interest of public transparency. And then on to the matter with Southside Community Association, and the second half of that one that you did not mention, Councilmember Whelan, concerns the discussion with our police department regarding the training. Those were the 2 amendments that were appended to the budget last week. Thank you for that, by the way. We have nailed down the cost of the training. This is the de-escalation training and related trainings that were not part of the budget this year, and we have ascertained with our police chief and his crew the cost of getting that training reinstated. We have that figure. We're ready to roll on that. We have yet to reach out to the Southside Community Association. That one's on my desk. I'm going to make every attempt to reach Ms. Harris tomorrow and others and start trying to attribute a cost to the forms that are being discussed. I am confident that we can report back to council before the recess on what those costs look like. Since you approved the budget subject to those amendments, we want you to know what they look like, and then with a roadmap as to how to proceed forward. So thank you, Councilmember Whelan, on bringing that forward. The last thing I'll mention, and it's related to that topic, is there are, by my count, I think we have 3 fair items that concern this, which in turn concern the discussion of last week. One is a citizen initiated that will be before council before the recess. Our legal counsel has advised us on that, and we're getting it queued up accordingly. And then 2 council member fair items that will be coming to you after the recess, but both are a little bit on point with this. I mention that because there's some opportunity that, back to the comment about administrative approach, Councilmember Whelan, I would hope that we can consolidate, because I think there are underlying objectives to all 3 of the fair items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And, you know, my idea of using the administrative approach would be to expedite what we're doing. So that's why I would bring that up rather than the fair process. So thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate them.
So with that, Mr. Clifton, you have given us your entire update. I don't see any other comments. I have nothing for tonight, so we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a pleasant evening.